Okay, let's get started then.
Hey, yeah, ready to go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Marion Wehack, and I'm a production designer based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I'm also the Directors Guild of Canada Art Department rep. And it's with great pleasure and enthusiasm that I welcome you all here tonight. And I see that I assume there's mostly people from Canada and the United States, but I see there's people from Australia and Mexico. So really, if you haven't already put it in the chat, please put where you're from, because it's fantastic to see where everyone's from at tonight's session. Tonight we'll enjoy listening to DGC production designer director David Hackl and our special guest, Canadian-born LA-based production designer Jeremy Hindle. And I'll talk about creative process in the course of an informal conversation, essentially between two long-standing friends. So I think it'll be a really enjoyable conversation meeting. Before we get started, I have a few things I want to mention. To allow the hour-long conversation to kind of flow freely and with ease, we'll reserve any questions and comments to the end. But if you have something you want to ask or comment, please feel free to put it into the Q&A through the course of the conversation. And at around 8:45, we'll try to address as many as possible. There's not a hard out on this evening. I'd like to allow Jeremy and David to talk for about an hour, and then we'll have 45 minutes to have half an hour or so to deal with questions and your input. In the meantime, feel free to chat amongst yourselves in the chat box. The event's being recorded, and the recording will be posted on the DGC YouTube channel in the coming days. And if you're interested in accessing that or just want to kind of reference to that, Julian Lung, who's our tech guru in the virtual back room with me here, but he might have been on the screen earlier, but anyway, he's our tech guru. He'll post the link in the chat so you can get it there. Also, there's Julian. Also, at the end of this evening's event, Julian will post the PDFs of the visual material being presented during the conversation. And there's some real gems in there. So do stick around and you can access them through the chat. Again, at the end of the evening. So now, before introducing you to David and Jeremy, I'd like to make this request and acknowledgement. Wherever you are in Canada or the United States or elsewhere in the world, please take a moment to honor your Indigenous people's long history of welcoming many nations to their beautiful country and territory. I'm grateful for all that we have, and I'm committed to upholding and uplifting the voices and values of our host nations. So now I'd like to introduce you to our illustrious guests. David Hackl has spent 30 years working as a production designer, writer, executive producer, and director. He began his career art directing music videos and commercials and transitioned to commercial directing in the early 1990s. With an eye on long format work, David returned to designing in 1997 to design Saul Rubinek's feature debut, Jerry and Tom. Over his career, David has production designed many successful projects, notably including the hit sci-fi series Lex, The Dark Zone, and for his work on the highly successful Saw franchise, first as the production designer, second unit director, and then as the director. Directing's become a major focus for David, and his projects have included Into the Grizzly Maze with Billy Bob Thornton, Life on the Line starring John Travolta, and Daughter of the Wolf starring Richard Dreyfuss, which David also executive produced. Most recently, David wrote, directed, and executive produced the action thriller Dangerous, starring Mel Gibson and Scott Eastwood, which was Lionsgate's most profitable film of 2021 and enjoyed a top 10 spot on Amazon Prime for 10 straight weeks. Currently, David has 13 directing projects at various stages of development, and he's writing 4 features and 2 TV series. Such a slouch, David. He continues to production design whenever he gets the chance, including biopic Salt and Pepper, for which David won the 2021 DGC Art Craft Award for Best Production Design. So I'm David. Do you want to show your face? Here's David Hackl.
Hi, Marion.
Hi.
So thank you so much. I'm exhausted just listening to that.
Yeah,
hi, everyone.
And Jeremy Hindle was born in Ontario, Canada in 1969. He studied film at Ryerson University in Toronto, which is now called Toronto Metropolitan University, and began his career as a set decorator in Toronto before moving into production design and commercials. He got his start in commercials working with some pretty big name directors such as Frederick Bond, Nicholas Fosig, Andrew Dominic, and Alejandro Gonzalez on YouTube. Jeremy made the jump to features thanks to his working relationship with DP Greg Fraser. And based on Greg's recommendation, Jeremy was hired as the production designer for Catherine Bigelow's Academy Award nominated film Zero Dark 30. Fantastic film. He received an Art Directors Guild Award nomination for his work on the film, which was his first feature film, by the way, and went on to work with Bigelow again on Detroit. Additionally, he designed True Story for Rupert Gould, and Top Gun Maverick for Joseph Kosinski, for which he received an Art Directors Guild Award nomination. Jeremy also designed Kosinski's film Escape from Spiderhead for Netflix, and recently has been working with Ben Stiller on the hit television series Severance for Apple TV+. Jeremy received an Emmy nomination for Severance and won the Art Directors Guild Award for his impressive work on that series. He's currently designing season 2 of Severance, and I can't wait to see it because I love that series. Having worked with Jeremy some 20 years ago, and here's Jeremy. So, hey, Jeremy.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody.
Thanks so much for being part of this.
Thank
So
you.
having worked with Jeremy some 20 years ago, when he was a set decorator on a small indie film I designed called Tart, I can attest that he's a affable, resourceful, inquisitive, and talented guy. And tonight, we're indeed fortunate to have David bringing his impressive and accomplished director-designer expertise to this upcoming conversation, where the focus will be on some of the creative and practical processes at play on Jeremy's most recent stellar productions. Now, I know you have both have lots to talk about, and it'll be a fantastic conversation, so take it away. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in about quarter to 8.
11.
At about 8:45, we'll come back and do the question and answers things. Okay, so feel free to put your questions and answers your questions in the chat, and these guys will answer them. Okay, take it away.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Marion.
Marion. Thanks so much. Hey, Jeremy, how are you?
I'm very good. How are you, Dr. Hackl?
I am good. I'm good. Well, this is going to be fun. As we said to Marion, only giving us an hour is going to be a little difficult. So, we're going to have to keep things a little tight. But, I've had the great pleasure of talking with you many, many times about your projects. And, something that is always really important to me when I'm hearing you speak is how you rose up to the position you're in now, and where it all came from originally, and then I just want to go into each one of these projects and look at how you handle them, because I think that there's a lot of great anecdotes that you're gonna drop in there. I know you can talk, but I really want to talk about what it is that helps you put these things together, what your techniques are, and really what kind of things you have to consider when working with top level directors on huge studio projects like this with fabulously big budgets and beautiful stories. So first, let's start with where you really started out.
Which one, Catherine? You want to just go there?
Well, even like all the way back. I know you started in set deck.
I went to Ryerson, and I left because I was too busy. I got a little start on Bruce McDonald's on Dance Me Outside as a sound playback, I think, for 2 weeks. I met David Webb. I met half my heroes on that movie. And then I kind of just kept working. And I worked with Marion. I worked with Tamara Deverell. I worked with everybody. Carol Spear. I worked with all my heroes in Toronto. And then I got into commercials, designing in commercials. And that took me for years. That's a good 10 more years. And I was really fortunate because I started traveling outside of Canada. I met Nikolai and Frederick, and they started traveling me to South Africa and Argentina. And once I got into that box, my brain clicked with how I would really do this job, which was I was an explorer. Like I could go anywhere. They'd ask me like, where should we shoot this commercial? And I would be like Africa, Hong Kong, and it was really about being an explorer. Like how could I work somewhere else? And how could I achieve a look that was interesting that no one had ever seen? And it was really, commercials were amazing at that time because we could do anything. there was tons of money and everyone was, it was kind of game on time. So I was really lucky to get that great break. And I met so many amazing DPs. I worked with like all the top-notch people because they were all working on the same projects between films. Chivo, it didn't matter who, you worked with everybody and you'd meet the best of the best. And it was that really taught me to be really confident in the world of especially big movies where the pressure is really the same. It's really just learning the language of them.
Yeah, yeah, and as far as it goes, I mean, you know, the problem solving is amplified, I feel, on commercials so much. When I remember you telling me about working on 75 shoot day commercial one time, and I was just like, Jesus Christ, you know, how do you?
Well, I mean, with Alejandro, we went around the world. I think it was 69 days.
Yeah,
and it's just, you know, it'd be LA and Brazil and London and China all at the same time. And you're working with, I'd have multiple crews in all those countries. I'd hire the best designer art director to work with me. So I had their crew. And it was basically really prepping to do movies the way that I do, which was really figure out how to be super articulate, but also giving them the freedom, which we always want to do to our art department, is to let them do something special. And it just makes your work the best. It really is. And I learned that behavior and trust. And it was really because the internet it was just technology afforded us people to work like this, which is the way I'd love to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, that takes a lot of organization. So were you able to put together like techniques? Did you develop techniques on your own of how to handle, how to organize all that? How the hell do you keep that straight in your head? Right.
You know what? I don't forget any images. So it's actually, I forget what people tell me. I'll forget. But if I see something, I never forget it, ever. And the beauty of an iPhone or a computer, I remember my first digital camera was so prime. It was the basics of the first one. And because I started using them, they kind of work as your memory, like they assist your memory. So I would photograph everything. I would document everywhere I went. I would never just look around. And I really learned too that when you're scouting, which is a lot of what we do, especially in commercials, you're scouting first, and any story, is to just get out there with the camera and just look, just go, and don't plan so much. Just find it, just let it go, document it, come back, let it shift through your brain. I never look at them at the end of the day. Look at them the next morning, organize them, and then every day is just the next thing. And it just was a way of creating an organization that was also, because I never believe you should look at them at the end of the day. You should look at them in the morning when you wake up and think. Your brain's process so much more information, and then you look at them, and the stuff that you thought was amazing was terrible. The stuff you're like, wow. And I think if you don't take that time, you just get excited about something, but it doesn't necessarily tell the story. And it's like making sure that, you know, you're telling the story that's why we're here. And it was really those tricks of digital technology and accessibility and cameras were really how I could stay organized.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is actually a really good place to jump into Zero Dark 30. Because I remember you did a lot of scouting on that and talked about how you were really trying to get the essence of the place, you know, so that it could be very natural. Can you talk a little bit about that? Going to Jordan?
Yeah, so what is funny was when I got, actually Carl Jellensen was the original designer, who I love, a Danish man, but he'd fallen ill, so he couldn't do it. He did the Hurt Locker. He's amazing. And so they were looking for somebody. I think I was number 19, and I think it was number 19. And Catherine and I just clicked in 10 seconds. And the producer did not he was ready to kill me. But she just said, you got to go. And I got on a plane 2 days later. I went to Amman, Jordan. And they wanted to do the whole movie in Amman. And I obviously hadn't been to Amman, and I didn't know this story. So I read a script that there was 3 copies of. I have number 3. And I couldn't take it with me because they were so secretive. So I read it, and I didn't read it again until I got back after a few weeks of scouting. So I went to Jordan, and I literally saw part of the world, but I knew that we couldn't make the movie there. So I came back 3 weeks later, and I said, Catherine, we have to go to India. There's no way we can make this movie in Jordan. And it was just before Christmas. So we all went on hiatus. We came back, and they sent me back to Amman, Jordan. And I got there, and I'm like, look, this is all the stuff I can do in Amman. I can build a compound. We're starting to build it. We can do all the military stuff, but there's not a tree in this place. We're not doing Pakistan. There's nothing that looks like this. We have to go to India. And I think it was about 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, the producer finally came in and said, look, we're going to go to India. And it was 3 weeks before shooting. And I literally got on a plane that day and I went to India and I scouted the north of Chandigarh, which we'd already seen a few photos, but I just, I got on a plane and went. And I called everybody, I think 4 days later, and Catherine flew over and Mark flew over, and then the whole unit moved to India 3 weeks before shooting. And we did it. We shot there for a month in the north. We did a ton of sets. Everybody just scrambled like a nightmare. And at the same time, I had a crew in Oman working on all the military. And then I just had the idea that I couldn't do all the American stuff in Jordan because they can't build out of wood. They don't have wood. So I said, we have to go to London to do the rest because the whole crew's British that I brought. I had 22 people from London. I'm like, we're not going back to America. We need to keep the same crew. No one can read the script. And we're going back to London to Shepperton and we're going to build all the sets. And it kind of just was like a big commercial to me. I just treated it the exact same. I was like a runaway train that was unstoppable. And the thing about Catherine is amazing is because she's the kind of director that I love, that she gives you full reign. She likes to make the movie like it's fresh, like she wants to see it for the first time. So she's not going to look at a lot of stuff. She doesn't scout a lot. She'll scout only when I've picked the favorite one that I love. However I want to visually tell the story, she's on board for, and she shows up. And if it calls 9 o'clock, she's shooting at 9:01. She just shoots it. And she wants it to be fresh and real. So for me, it was like the most amazing collaborative experience for a first film because I was just on, I was the cooker. I had to just go do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, and do you find that sometimes, like I personally find, whether it's directing or production designing, that sometimes these problems solve themselves because the answer is so obvious.
Yeah.
Something like going to India and going to London. I mean, you look at all the practical ways you could do something, and it really comes down to just one. Here's how we have to do this thing. But it's nice to have the freedom, right?
Well, and honestly, Mark wrote an amazing script that he did not write. He did not do any rewrites. He only rewrote the dialogue. Not one scene changed from the script that I read that he wrote in, I think, 3 weeks. Like Obama, Osama was killed and he wrote it and he sold it within 3 to 6 weeks and it got into production. It was so fast, but the beauty was there were no rewrites. So I had a script that was like ironclad in the sets that they were. So I just had to learn it super fast. I'd always used researchers. I'm a huge fan of researchers. So I had 2 amazing researchers, one in London and one in America. And it was just like, look, let's just go. We need to find everything while I'm scouting. And so once again, technical, the digital information gave us a lot of leeway into finding photographs. And it's kind of like the best movie to start on in a weird way.
Yeah.
It was 110 sets.
Jesus, 10 sets. That's incredible. Now, something that we talked a little bit about before, but did you have a lot of cooperation from the military on this?
We didn't, because Mark Bull had pissed off the DOD on the Hurt Locker. So we had zero access to anything military, nothing. The planes, they were all people we met through basically what I had was a personal letter from the King of Oman that I had access to whatever it had to offer. And I could go see any general with that document, and I would go in, try not to put my feet across my legs because I'd get in trouble and I'd forget, drink my tea, meet them, and then I'd see Blackhawks. I'd see anything that was sort of their classified, but anything that we could access, like military bases where we would shoot and build some sets. So I had, it was really just, I had the King's access of Oman, of Jordan.
Yeah. So really, your research must have come from, I guess, what you had seen in the media.
That's all of it. Yeah. That's all we had. And honestly, a lot of, I have to say, like, I did a deep dive when I was in Oman. I was like, every night I was obsessed about researching, and I found this really terrible document of this man being tortured in Iraq. It was horrible. And you start, I was finding blogs. This is our early stages of internet still. Like, it's amazing how primitive it was in 2012 or 11 when we made it.
Yeah. But
I found these personal military blogs, and you'd find images that were just disturbing. And then that night, the CIA has the biggest base in the world in a month. My email was wiped out, and I never had access to it again once I found that photo. But I remember it, and it was, to me, was that the story was so much bigger. The torture of it, just, there was so much to know and learn and to do justice, that it was a pretty horrible idea. And it really, that's what I loved about Catherine. Like, it's not a victory tour because of Osama. It's really that these are the humans that we are. This is who we are. And I felt that it was really important to know as much. And I really did. I don't think if without the internet, I would never have found any of that. These were like personal, like really crappy photos, like, 1.3 megapixel little postage stamp pictures and stuff, but they gave you the idea and you could see the spaces. And it's quite a deep dive. Want to do it again.
I mean, it's such a great film. And the thing that I love about it the most is how, it would have been so easy to make that a political film, to be, but it was really about the people, as you say. And that's, something that I think Catherine Bigelow is so good at, is really focusing on, who was affected in this story, and how were they affected in the story.
And it's kind of like you pass the baton. Like, she does that a lot, where it's just, you see another person go, and it's really just, humans can be really dangerous and nasty and great and loving. And it's just that's what I really loved about the experience, is that, how she likes to tell a story, and how much, like, she knows that if you do an amazing job, her job is to tell the story within the spaces you give her. And so she doesn't obsess about anything. It's like, you do your thing, whatever you want to do. It's pretty amazing.
So this is something that I definitely know about you, is that you are, you're a beast when it comes to details and doing your research and getting, deep into the story and the minutia. And, like, going back to talking about your, when you're location scouting and looking at your images the next day, do you find you make little discoveries in there that really inform what your design choices are when you go to a place like Jordan? And really,
I always, Ken Adams always said, when he, early Bond movies, he was like, look, you can't design a whole world in a year. Nobody can, but you can go scouting, and then you can come back, and then you have this thing that you can make yours, and all those things. And it's exactly the same thing. It's really, and I think what's amazing about young people now is they don't actually have to get on the plane. Like, we used to get on the plane, and I still love it. I think part of that is you need to be there to see it and feel it. Like India, you can't, but it's definitely, you need to fly around and see it. And it's, my ideas is always like, it's like research and scouting. You put it all in your head and you go to sleep, and you wake up, and in the shower, it all comes alive. And then I'm a big napper. I told everybody, I always teach this in the class, like, I have a sofa in my office, and around 2 to 3, I take a half-hour nap. I think everyone should. Doesn't mean I'm asleep, but it means I'm not, the door's locked, and I'm just processing information without thinking how I'm going to do it, why I'm going to do it. It's just, what is it? Yeah. And those are the luxuries of design that I love, is store your brain full of information and let it permeate out with how you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I love location scouting. It's one of my favorite times, and I've been to some wild places in the world, like you have, and had access to places that you would never otherwise have access to, tunnels and bunkers, and under Berlin, and crazy places all over the world.
Well, and you've done the same. The key is they take you to a place, but you just keep walking.
Yeah,
and they try to trace you down. I've had more guys not find me and go, "Where did you go?" And I'm up on a rooftop an hour later, and I can't stop. I'm just obsessed. And then you find the thing. They show you one thing, but it's like never to just go there and say, okay, whatever, let's leave. It's like, look around, knock on doors.
My motto is always look around the next corner, because, just when you come into a place, you go, this is perfect, we'll shoot here. Even, as a director or as a production designer, I walk in and look at a place and say, okay, well, what's over there? Because sometimes you find something that is so much better, or something that just inspires, the feeling and the tone of the story. But always look around that next corner, I say, because and I think about when I production designed my first film with Saul Rubinek many years ago. Saul would walk into a place and say, what if we had to shoot here? I would look around and say, well, there's probably something better. And he'd say, yes, but what if we had to shoot here? How would we do it? what would we do? How would we block this place, right? What could you add to it? What could you, turn this into? And I think that's a really great way to do it. I think that's a great way to look at a location, or even just, when you're taking something out of the script, consider what else could it be, right?
Always, because it never should just be that ever.
Yeah.
I mean, unless, Wes Anderson, I would say probably does that. That's cool. I'd say 90% of the people you're going to work with, I prefer to keep it really open, and it could say bedroom, and the next thing I know, it's a kitchen, or it's a office, or it's on Mars. It doesn't, to me, it's like you have to explore and find it, and also to have a writer who's really in flux with you, that can adapt with, you can show them ideas and say, it could be this, and then it just churns. And it's really, you have to pick your, I always tell everyone, you have to pick great collaborators. But, you got to pick the director first, and you got to meet the writer, and then you have to make sure you're with the right partners. If you pick the wrong partner and you've sold them on you, but they're not really, they got to be in love with you. They just have to be.
Yeah.
And you have to and want to go with them down the path.
Obviously, Catherine was in love with you because you went on to do Detroit next, right? And that's a story that's pretty challenging. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging because we didn't shoot it in Detroit. We shot it in Boston. We prepped it for 3 months in Detroit, and then Annapurna decided they couldn't spend the money. They wanted less. So we went for a rebate state. I wanted to go to Cleveland, but there was the National Republican Convention, so we had to go to Boston.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys have ever been to Boston, but Detroit is all long avenues like Europe, and Boston's like cow paths. There's not even a straight road. And Catherine likes 360s for all sets. It's always a 360. It's never like, hey, that's a good shot. Like the Coen brothers would be like, that's our shot of the street. Catherine, it's a 360 from, a full 360, up, above, down, doesn't matter. And I'd have to scout, and I'd put it all together. I'm like, Catherine, for the first time in your life, we're going to shoot this street on one side, the riots, and we're going to shoot the POVs in a completely other part of the city. And she was like, no. And I'm like, yeah. We don't have a choice.
By this point, you had her trust by this point, so I'm sure she was.
Yeah, and she was like, not a chance, because it's not like she wants to be free to. And I'm like, this is the first time that we have to do it, and we did it, and it was amazing. But it's and some of it is we do a lot of visual effects, or we figure out. I have to creatively block every scene. I have to know exactly how the story works when she comes in. Like on 0 to 30, like she's like, just tell me it. I'm like, Jessica sits here, she does this. This is in her desk. This is here. The whole thing, I act out every moment. And I'm like, and then I leave her and Greg, and I'm like, however they do it is the next phase. But this is how I see it. And then she loves that, and then she does her own thing with it. It's great. And Detroit is pretty much the same. And once again, like she brings, it's having the right people. Like she brought in great people to be with us, to help us educate us on the film and the research. And like Michael Dykston was with us, like amazing people to really help inform me, because he grew up in Detroit, and he was beat up when he was with his dad and his brother in the back of a car. He was 13. And I learned all these stories, and I learned where everybody lived, and because the representation had to be correct. To me, it was like, if she's going to tell this story, it cannot be questionable in any way that this is not perfect, because it would be such a shame. And Detroit's an amazing city, and it's never been the same. And I'm super proud of what we did on the movie. Yeah,
absolutely. And now I want to jump to the other end of the spectrum with designing, and jump ahead a lot. Something you've done recently that I think is absolutely outstanding is the show Severance, with Ben Stiller. And Dan Erickson's writing is spectacular, but I've heard you say that there wasn't a lot of detail in his writing, and that he described a fairly generic office in the writing, and then you had to find this. Like you had to find this world. You have to create this world, and I want to hear a little bit about that. I mean, I know you've told me some stories about this, but I think that it's really a fascinating thing, because it's a set that on first glance you kind of go, yeah, it's just here's what it is. It's just this big room and these hallways, but there's so much more to it, and so much more thinking went into it than just creating the average office.
Right. I mean, it was the first time I'd ever done a lookbook to get a job. I'd never done that. Like you mostly are excited to get a job, and I'm really picky. So like if I really was the one I really want, I'd be like, yes. And otherwise I wouldn't even meet the person. Like I was super picky. And then Ben called me and asked me if I would meet with him. And he sent me the script and I was like, it's an office story. This is so weird. What am I going to
Had
do?
you worked with Ben before on anything? No.
I'd never met him. So
Yeah.
I was in LA. He was in New York. He flew to LA. We met for lunch and I did this quick lookbook in 2 days. And I was like, why would I want to do an office show? But why does Ben want to? He's amazing. Like Dan Mora was mind blowing. I love his films. I think Tropic Thunder is an amazing movie. Like they're big. His scope is big. Then he's really talented. I thought, why would he want to do this? Okay, cool. The writing is funny. It's amazing. But it would say office, four desks, 4 chairs. The dialogue was hilarious. And the idea was mind blowing. The severed idea was like, wow, this is otherworldly. This is cool. But I was like, what do I do? So I put this lookbook together quick of like images, like some film and lots of just kind of design stuff. But it was more about, I realized like what I could do was make the audience, make the show interesting based on scale. Like everything was going to be about scale and design and scale and why a space makes you feel uncomfortable. Like they're down here on this MDR floor, the severed floor, and they have these hallways. They can go anywhere. And the math is that they can go anywhere because there's nowhere to go. And they could just, they go on forever. The place was like, Dan said, it's like 3 miles underground. I'm like, great. So it gave me the freedom to really explore scale, like a really low ceiling, like it's only 7 feet 8 inches in the MDR set. It's massive, 40 by 80. But it was really like, it was an iconic set in its own way because it's like Ben keeps calling it the set that just keeps on giving. Like it's so shootable because the scale is so interesting and you feel so free there. Like it's like a playground, like this green carpet and this desk. And the desk to me was because of John Ciccero. And I've told John this, he didn't know this, was when they, I thought of them being at this desk and I had this idea for this desk that the dividers could go up and down. We've all shot dividers a million times in commercials. Yeah. They're terrible. You can never see anyone. So do you custom make them lower? Do you not have them? And I was like, no, they need to move up and down. I'm like, imagine John Ciccero, he'll do it. And I didn't tell Ben or anyone. They knew I was making it, but I didn't tell anyone why. And then, of course, John Ciccero was the first person to like go. And it was creating like a play space. The movie Playtime to me was the biggest reference to Jacques Tati, which is a really funny movie that's all on stage, massive sets. I kind of took it as an homage to Playtime. And I was like, when I read this and I was underground, I was like, wait, I'm Keir. I can do whatever I want. And I figured Keir was basically Steve Jobs or Elon Musk. I'm like, okay, here's this owner of this $1 trillion company. I could do anything I wanted. Apple, Steve Jobs wanted the best paper. He sent people around the world to find the best paper company and he buys it in Sweden and makes the paper for the first iPhone box. And I thought it's the same obsessive nature. So the design has to be obsessive and it can be whatever I want because these people are being played with anyway. So you make all the rules. And then I'm like, wait, all these rules are my rules. I can do whatever we want to do. And those are the rules. And it was so much fun to do once, but terrifying because it's still an office environment. And how do you make a hallway interesting? And it's scale. It's like the longest hallways you've ever seen. We have so many hallways on stage.
Did Ben buy in right away? Did he did he see your vision right from the start? Or was it?
So when I showed him the lookbook, we were at lunch and I showed him this lookbook and I said, Ben, I'll do the show if you will do this like this. Like this is why I think I would do it. And he said, absolutely. And it was really, he has similar taste. Like Walter Mitty's a great look. His great taste. And he was like, absolutely, let's go. And I flew to New York the next week and, now we're on season 2. And it was also because Jessica, his DP, this girl from Montreal, Jessica Lee Gagné, who's unbelievable. She's not a DP per se that shoots episodic. She's someone who is really a creative force. Like the 3 of us dove deep into the script. We'd sit at Ben's office till 10 every night. And the 3 of us just talked and images and really beat each other up over how to make the show. It was hard. It wasn't kind all the time. It was kind as, nice people, but it wasn't like, we were fully allowed to say, that's not a good idea. And we respected each other's opinions so much that we really got to push it into an extra space that we all really felt equal on, and that it was going to be, and you know, it's also, it's like anything, you know, I didn't know how good it was. You never know if it's going to work.
Yeah.
But we felt so passionate, the three of us, and Dan, it was just, that freedom lets you really, I think, do something really good.
So one of the things I want to talk about with this set particularly, with this show is, for a DP, I imagine this could be kind of terrifying when the production designer comes and says, so every room just has these light boxes over top, you know? And, you know, collaborating with DPs, as our late friend Rob Gray would say, there's this holy triumvirate of the crew, the director, the DP, and the production designer, and they all have to think together on these things. And I've always found that it's really, really important to form a really good working relationship with the DP as early as possible through references and whatnot. But this is a set that I could imagine you showed the DP, Jessica, the references, and she might have been horrified, you know. Okay, they, you know, I have no hard sources. I have no windows to light through. I have, you know, so tell me about that.
You know, the whole floor didn't have it. And really, we built a lot of sets to test. Like, we tested a big chunk of MDR. I've never done more testing in my life. Every color, every texture, all the lighting, like every grade is, most of them, the ceilings are, even the panels are all, a lot of them are custom for us. And a lot of them were per Jess too. Like, she's really particular. And we knew, because it was windowless, we had no choice. Like, it had to be an office environment. I had shown Ben, like, you know, the original, my favorite reference for the show in my lookbook was John Deere's, the John Deere headquarters in Illinois,
Right.
which is designed by Yaros Aronin and Kevin Roche. And it was the style of offices when people really went to work at the office. They didn't have photographs on their desk. They had a pen, they had one pad, they had one phone, and they went to work. And then the 80s fucked it up, and everybody's like, yeah, let's make everybody work 14 hours a day, but you can bring it to work, bring your family here and look at them all day. And so ours was like, let's go back to, if these people are only working, there's no life down here. So we don't have to look at all that shit anymore. There's not even a Post-it now. It's just work. And what would that be? And it was back to the basics. And then, you know, the key with the desk was also like technology. I was like, all the technology has, if they ever got or if they remembered something as an Audi, they could explain it. It has to be, everything has to be unrecognizable enough that would make no sense. You'd be like, there's no such thing as that computer anymore. We even made that TV, that tube one, we made it even touchscreen. You could touch it and it works. We made it as adaptable as possible, but you know, like you'd never have that. And so it was all those sort of rules that everything was made by Lumen in their printing room. They made all their own food, their own packaging. So no one would ever know what they're doing. The outside world, it's impossible to ever know that Lumen did anything underground, because it's all their own world. They have thousands of people down here. It's kind of like Disneyland.
Yeah.
We can do what we want.
What I love about this is, you know, how much you based it in, you know, in just the architecture of the story, you know, what it needed to be, those hallways that were, you know, that were diminishing in many cases. They would get tighter and tighter in places. And I love those like 2 or 3 minute walk and talks down the hallway that were just like, they were excruciating to watch sometimes, because you're just like, when are they going to get to the end of this thing?
And those are all real. Like there's the odd set extension in some corners where it's just forever, but most of them, like then we built all the hallways. Everyone kept thinking we were going to do the little Star Trek thing where you just go around in a circle, and we're like, no, like left, right, and it's odd. If I think, do you have I can't remember, did I put the ground plan on this? It's really funny. It's kind of ridiculous.
It's incredible.
It's ridiculous. Like, it's archaic and it's bizarre, but all those little rooms that aren't, those are for crew, because if you look, we built right to the fire lanes. Like every stage we have is built to the fire lanes. There's no extra, I use every part of a stage. So there's little rooms that aren't sets, are just for crew to stage. Like, but they're also ways that we can, it was amazing. It's how you can shoot a show like this. And also like, and Ben is like, he's such a particular style of directing. He's so, his attention to detail is, you really need a partner to do a project like this, because he will paint out any detail that's not perfect, a crack, a foot mark. I mean, the visual effects in the show are mind-blowing because
That's what's crazy is, how many visual effects you find in a show like this, where you would think this is all practical. Like,
every scene, a wrinkle in a coat, it doesn't matter. It's gone. It's got to be perfect. And the wardrobe, like Sarah Edwards, was all of us together. The colors, like, we decided really early on, the only new colors will always be introduced by a character, not the sets.
I love that. Yeah.
So it's really like, oh, Diem's in now, or, it's like, it's always based on who's being introduced.
Yeah. Okay. So, talking about architecture, let's jump over to Spiderhead and Top Gun, who both projects were directed by Joseph Kosinski, who is a fantastic director from what I've heard. You attest to that.
He's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. It's crazy.
Yeah, but very, like I can see his architecture background coming through in that, in his work, because it is so particular. And now you did Top Gun before Spiderhead, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about Top Gun? Because I think that, a lot of people who are here today want to hear about Top Gun, because it's quite an incredible feat of production design, of directing, of acting, of story. How did you enter into this project? I mean, not how did you get this project, but how did you sort of, once you had the job, where did you start? Because it's so massive.
I mean, honestly, for me, not the hardest. What was interesting was the first movie was so freaking good and so cheesy at the same time. And the fact that the chemistry worked, that wasn't necessarily an intention. It works and it makes you, and we loved everyone in it. So I was like, okay, if we're going to do this again, obviously technology, everything we have can be better, but how do we still tell the story that what people loved about Top Gun, what they love about Maverick, is that it's romantic, it's nostalgic, like it's all those things. And for me, I'd never done anything like this. I'm like romantic lighting, romantic sets, nostalgic sets that are like every, the detail thing is something I'm into, but it was more just how to think sometimes more about an audience than I'd ever thought about. Like I'd always thought about, and not in a way to give them what they wanted, but just know that they're actually part of this film. This film is such a big history. So it was like that going into it, like was thinking like, this is a great photograph, that last one, like that, we shot that so many times. It was built in multiple stages, this close, like that insert. The storyline in that wall is so intense. Tom, the Navy, test pilots, they're all on that wall. Like I went through.
Yeah, by the way, I just want to, give a shout out to Jan Pascal, your set decorator, who was phenomenal on this. Like the set decoration in this, and I believe you guys are nominated for set decoration for Set Dec Society Award, aren't you?
Yeah, I think did she win? I think she won.
Oh, she won. Great. Yeah. It's absolutely stunning. I mean, when you look at the detail, I've certainly been scrolling through your lookbook here. There's unbelievable detail in this. So
I mean, every one of those things on that wall, I could tell you an hour story behind each one. Like where there's the main one is where he gets the sunglasses off that tail wing of the missile.
But no, I'm kidding.
No, but that was Joe Laney, who's like Skunkworks' #1 test pilot. He's tested 101 planes, like vehicles in his lifetime. He's a hero. He's a genius. He's amazing. And I went to his office and I saw that there, and I'm like, can I have it? That's what I'm like. Like I'm like, can I have that? Can I have that? Everywhere we went, I'm like, can I have that?
Yeah.
Can I borrow that? And we borrowed it. We fabricated it and sent it back to him. But everything in there personally came from me meeting them and telling them a story. Because Mav's story needed to be, after 30 some years, it needed to be explained. And you needed to know that you wanted to feel that it was really believable and that this is what he'd really done for this amount of time. And so we really just, and the Navy, like, I have such a respect for, like, I met so many amazing people at Top Gun Fallon and the Navy, the Air Boss. Like, you're going for drinks with the general.
I have a feeling you've made up with the military here, and you're now getting the support.
Well, it's for me, it was like they were just so. I mean, this is just, they are like they're like film people. They have the exact same passion. whatever they do is it's like 1,000%. They play a baseball game, it's 1,000%. They play football, like their work ethic is the same as ours. So I had about 4 or 5 people that were with us at all times, like Ferg, and like, there's a lot, and they'd be with us and they'd help me get planes. They'd introduce me to people. They'd fly with me to Top Gun, and we do walkthroughs and we do meetings with them. And this was just for art department. This isn't for the flying portion, which is completely different. Like that is like next level stuff with Tom. And you also, when you're working with Tom Cruise, and especially I think on this project, Tom was he's so adamant. He needs to know everything that he touches or looks at. Like the Dark Star, the cockpit was so much work. And because he's an amazing pilot. He would fly any plane if they let him. We did build this, yeah.
Now, is it designed based on something, or is it just like a concept that you guys came up with saying we need a new machine?
So this was Joe's idea to open the movie with the Dark Star. The Dark Star was his kind of baby to kind of like you quickly learn how cool Tom still is and who he is and what he is, and he's still the best and the baddest. And it's a great idea. And I wanted to build it because I thought, with Tom, we needed to be here with him. He's in it, but I also want him to touch it and feel it. And I knew we'd never change in the post. Like I'm not that kind of person. Joe's not that kind of person. Like we want to know everything's tactile and real. And it's like, when it's done, it's done. And so we designed this with Daniel Simon, who did the bubble ship with Joe in Oblivion. And we also did it with Skunkworks. We had a deal with Skunkworks. So we had Daniel and Joe and I would go sit with the head. So Skunkworks is the highest level of Lockheed Martin for all testing and design of prototype aircraft. And like the B-52, everything like these, and they are the best of the best of the best. So we have full access to go into their spaces and talk to them and interview them, and they can't tell us, they could direct us, we could show them something and they'd be like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And it, in any way possible without anything being classified. And we know that this plane is pretty much would be flyable, just can't hold enough fuel. But it's aerodynamically, it's a masterpiece. And it was amazing to build. And I was like, just the fact that we got to do with Skunkworks, and we built it in conjunction with them, with their vendors, because we had to build it so bloody fast. But yeah, no, and the cockpit alone, every detail has amazing little, like only test pilots will know that this switch is from this F-35 test plane. The stick that Tom's holding on to that I put a little Skunkworks on, that's from some prototype plane. I don't even know what it is, and no one will ever know, but 10 people know at Skunkworks. And that's what, and also here's a great thing. If you look at the top left picture, when we were designing it, and we were like, I can't remember, we're always asking these guys, what's the main thing about making a plane like this? What do you think? And they were like, they all said the same thing. It has to be mean looking. Like we want it to be mean looking too. They're just like, they got to be mean looking. And we're like, look at it. It's so mean on that. It's amazing.
That's great. I love when your film research crosses over into real world ideas, and you're working with the pros in their industry, the top level people in their industry. But I want to talk about the bar in this, because you told me a story about the bar. What's the beach bar called? The
hard deck.
The hard deck. Yeah. And what a McGill that was, building that place and set decorating.
Yeah, so originally they just wanted a location. We were only going to be there for like 5 days or something, and I scouted 86, I think, not available places that are on a beach in all of California, from north to San Diego. I saw them all personally, and said that's not going to happen. You can't shoot with Tom in a public place, in a public beach. You can't do any of this, and we can't. This is just way too detailed. Like once I showed them these pictures, like there's a few renderings there, and like you can't tell the difference barely. And I'm like, we need to build this, but we need to build it on a beach, which in California is almost impossible because every environmentalist says not a chance. And then I said, well, what about in San Diego on the base? They have an amazing beach. And then the environmentalist said, but there's pluffers that are on the beach, so you can't build on the beach. And they were like, well, what's the window of no pluffers on the? I'm like, not, I'm not stoppable. There's always a way, right?
What are pluffers?
They're like, there's like a 6-week window where there's no pluffers and there's nothing happening on the beach, no seals. This would be your window. Okay, great. We'll build the entire thing on stage and we'll dress it. It'll be all steel structure, but looks like wood. And we will build it all, dress it all, strike it all, and crane it into place on a beach. And we'll reassemble it all. And we did. And we shot it there and it was spectacular. It was amazing. I mean, Tom was so excited when he walked in. It was pretty mind-blowing.
Wow. And like just the set decoration alone, how long did that take?
I mean, because it was done before prior, most of it, weeks and weeks and weeks. And Jan, like, I think I forget how many planes there are, 2,000 planes hanging, thousands of mugs, and those chairs, like that was all the details. They're still, again, they're all the bases that we went to. Like we would go to we went to every real Navy base has an eye bar that's real, but they're literally really tiny. And they have maybe some of this concept of about 2% because it's it has to be personal items. There's no money spent on them. So a lot of these were like, oh, that was the look of a chair that was in Fallon at the real Top Gun at their bar, was amazing. I'm like, so I started, like, as we went around, it was like taking all these ideas, and then we were in Lemoore, which is the biggest Navy fighter base in the world. And we were walking the hallways, meeting all the pilots, and I met this guy with Jan, and he was opening a museum, and he'd been collecting for 30 years all this stuff. And I was like, I saw one thing on the wall. I'm like, can we have it? And he's like, sure. And like, can we have it all? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, everything that you've been storing to open a museum, can we have it all? And he was like, okay. And then we got it all. And I mean, but it's not like it was all personally owned by different people. So he did so much work for months with Jan, but to organize it all and get it all to us. Because a lot of it, like, there's one big tail wing in here that's amazing, that 2 guys drove from Fallon in the back of their pickup, 2 Navy guys, and brought it to us. It's huge. We hung it on the wall. Like, it was on the mantle, there's 2 helmets, and one is the Air Boss and one is, oh my God, I forgot who the other guy, but the Air Boss is the leader of the Navy. Like, I'm going to his house and I'm like, can I borrow your helmet? I want to put it on the mantle behind Tom's head. You are the Air Boss of the Navy, 120,000 employees. Coolest guy I've ever met.
You said to me that a lot of the Navy guys were really kind of sentimental about what was going on and what was being put in not just this set, but in all the sets.
All the sets. Like, we would go, especially Ferg and Chaser, like, we had guys that really, every detail we would run past them, like, just wanted to make sure that it was authentic to them. This is their lives. These people risk their lives. These people lose their lives. Their families, like, we're film families. We're not that different. I'm living in New York right now. I'm away for a year. It's the same. Like, you have to treat these people with tons of respect because they're living, this is totally their life.
Yeah. And was there a real sort of lag time in decision making because things had to, effectively go up the flagpole and down again? Did you have to, clear everything with, with the Air Boss or whoever?
I mean, they did, for me, for the design was amazing because it was basically, I designed everything with Joe. I had a lookbook and it went to Tom, and that was the approval of the entire movie. And the lookbook was approved, and nothing changed, nothing. Yeah. Chris McQuarrie didn't rewrite anything. Like, it was all, the sets were designed, and there was a studio involvement. There was, Jerry would come in and hang out in my office. We talked about stuff, but it was pretty much just Joe and I were allowed to do this movie with just Tom, which was awesome. And I think that's, once again, that's that collaboration where you feel like it's not being watered down in any way. Like, the helmets was just Joe and I in graphics nonstop. We did so many different versions. It's crazy. Right. But it's a lot of times it was just because the names would change. You'd see it and go, that doesn't really look very good. And Joe is really particular about all these details, and Tom, they would just go to Tom. But I think for the approval process, like Tommy Harper, the producer, and yeah, that's a marriage that's really complicated.
Sure. Now, let me ask this, with a project like this, where the budget is, obviously huge, do you find it's easier or more difficult?
I don't feel it's hard at all. I mean, it's funny because people say to you, this is a lot of money. And it's like, what's a lot of money? $1,000 is a lot of money to me. $10 million is a lot. It's all a lot of money to me. So I'm always like, kind of like, yeah, it's a lot of money. I get it. But it's the same thing. It's just, is this worthy of the story? And I just I just go for the idea that this is what it has to be. And you always have to, obviously, like we always have to say, okay, I can't do that. I can do this. But most of the time I feel like you just have to put it out there and walk everybody through it once they see it and go, well, does it really need to be this big? And it's like, if in your head you believe it, they'll believe you. And you have to, and I wouldn't sell it if I didn't believe it. I think that's the key too, is like, I learned this from Alejandro and I love it. And I already knew it, but he's the best. You never try and sell something ever. If you're not into it, don't sell me on something that you love. Like Nikolai would say that to me. He was like, dude, I don't want what I want. I want the Jeremy Hindle. And it was always like, that is how you should think, is you do it and then people follow it. They will.
Yeah. So speaking of which, how was it selling things to Tom? Did you have to sell them to him, or?
I never had to. No, it was literally just, he would always come to set, like the renderings. He approved all the sets. I didn't even see him. And then he came. We always do a walk on like days before, and the toughest was the hangar because it was so much story and it wasn't really written out completely, and it changed. And it's a lot of it because it's stuff that we find and build and create and photographs, and once you put it together, it starts to feel, you see it in everybody. It's like me filling my head with stuff. They need stuff too. Like, yeah, you'd fill their brains and then they'd be like, and then they come back the next day and they'd have more. And Chris McHugh's amazing that way. Like, he's a great writer to work with because he's super, you take him through it and he's like, his mind's spinning with it. And then he writes great stuff based on it. And that's the cool level of this stuff. That's what I think is, that's on any good film, whether it's $1 million or 10 or 100 million. It's once again, are you surrounded with the right people? Yeah.
Yeah, and you've surrounded yourself with great teams. I mean, from your concept artists to certainly set decorators, you've always been really, really great at just bringing together the right crew, and that is obviously so important. Do you?
You know what? Actually, I can comment. I actually love that because I treat it like casting. I rarely use the same people on the next project. Like, if the person's right, but I don't have a crew that I like work with. Like, some people like work their whole lives, and I respect that. I think it's cool, but I'm always like, I interview people, and it's more based on, are we clicking on this project? I think the project should be a new one every time.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I was just going to ask you about visual effects and how tightly you work with visual effects and the visual effects team.
I mean, Ryan is amazing, and Pablo. I'm super freaky about it because every sort of large frame in this show, in this film, and anything I do is rendered by us, and we give it to them, and then they follow that path. It's not an open grab design at all, like zero. I talk to them all the time and see it. It's hard because when a project like this, which was in post for 2 years, but Ryan, I trust, and Pablo, like, it would never have been it would never jump outside of our world ever. Ever.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, listen, it's a fantastic film, and it looks so natural. I mean, I love that you said that it has this little quality of being kind of hokey and romantic, but you just buy right into it. I mean, I was a skeptic. When I went to see it, I was like, am I going to like this? Because the last one was what it was, and I was worried that it was going to be overly jingoistic, but I really just fell right into it. And you guys all did a fantastic job on it. It's beautiful.
Can you go back to the last one? There's a little wood. Yeah. So basically, when you've done this, when you build something like this, you need to build a buck to like get the, especially for someone like Tom, it needs to be, he gets in it. Is this the right size? Does he feel comfortable? You build it all around him out of wood. And it was really funny because the roof, came down on him. It was a styrofoam, but it had the shape of the window. And we did this so Tom's comfortable. He knows where he wants every gauge where he likes it. So that's great. But I was like, I just wanted to see what his face looked like in the window. And I put it down and I was like, Tom, can you just turn to me for a second? And my heart stopped. It looked like he was going 1,000 miles an hour. I was like, how do you do that? He's like, what? I'm like, you look so fat. Like I thought he was flying, and it was just a box. It was like a go-kart in front, like a box cart. But that's the Tom Cruise thing. He had this look, and I'm like, it was like, this is amazing. It works. It's such a cool privilege to see something like that. And honestly, that's what it's just to work with someone like that, because his effort is insane.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard he's very particular about everything, but at the same time, always for the right purpose.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's always about the story.
Exactly. And I mean, this one must have been very close to his heart, obviously, because it is, at the point that he's at in his career, and the fact that he's bringing back a story that, if it was done wrong, could not work and could be a disaster, really.
Yeah, no, I think it was for everyone, it was really, it's daunting, because it's I don't know, it's a movie we all grew up with. It's like, and it's not, it's one of the hardest things I think you could make. Not me personally, but I think for writing and for just trying to get the story notes correct. And it's hard. I was terrified. Yeah.
How long were you on this project altogether?
I started about a day, and then Tom broke his ankle on mission. So we didn't go, we got shut down for a little, we didn't even start. And then I guess like a year,
Wow.
Maybe 14 months in total.
That does not seem like a long time for a project like this to me.
Well, it wasn't, because the main unit was, I think, 95 days of shooting, and then they shot for 150 days of flying in second unit. But I wasn't there for that, because it's literally a lot of days they don't even get anything. It's just flying stuff. And then second unit was probably 60 days, and I wasn't there for the second unit. It was a lot of aircraft, and it's more all the flying stuff.
Yeah.
We literally shot me out first.
Like, we got to get rid of that guy. He's too expensive. Spends a lot of money.
Well, it's honestly, a lot of the art department wasn't, like, you didn't need them all. Like, it was Tommy, it was a really smart way to do it. Like, it didn't need to, and I came back in for about 6 more weeks when there was more to do and a few new sets. And that was like months later, which was cool. And then it's just how it was done.
Yeah. Marion, do we have time still to talk for a few minutes about Spiderhead?
Oh yeah, I have lots of time. You still have half an hour.
Oh, great.
Or less. I was gonna let you talk till 8:45, but
Jeremy knew she was lying to us.
There's only 2 participants left.
No.
Oh, wait.
No,
there's still 136. Sorry, I wasn't clear about that, but no, we can go. I don't want to have you sort of like doing lampshade jokes, but we can. I thought we could take you till 1:45, and then.
All right.
Cool. Here earlier, just signal when you want to jump into the questions, and because there are.
Yeah, just because we're here, I was wondering if anyone has any particular Top Gun questions that want to ask at this point.
There's no particular ones out there right now, but does anyone want to pop something into the chat or put their hand up if they have a particular Top Gun question, since we're talking about Top Gun?
Oh, look, Tamara's there. Hi, Tamara.
Tamara's here. Hey, Tamara.
Hey, Tamara.
Awesome.
Okay, Zaki, Julian, can you see that? Zaki Abdul Shafi raised his hand.
I see him. I will allow him to speak.
Okay,
Great.
someone else raised their hand.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this tonight. The question I had was the whole prep and the move of the steel structure that you did on the beach. I was just curious, like how, and you said you had 6 weeks. So how does the conversation, something like that, start? Like, how do you say, like, oh, this whole thing is going to be steel structure, or do you discuss, like you said, different process of how you design your sets? But this one in particular, how did it start? What happened there? Like, was it like you had all these ideas and you decided like this is what you want to do and it has to be in the beach and this is the scale, or you had to like shave things off and realize that you couldn't be as ambitious, or is this as ambitious as you wanted it to be and you've reached the goal? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, this was as ambitious.
We're getting an echo. There you go. That'll be better.
It was everything I could have imagined. It was just, at every turn, everything in the world kept saying it's not possible. This wasn't possible. This beach wasn't possible. These people aren't possible. This isn't possible. The pluffers aren't possible. And I had this amazing construction coordinator, Anthony Syracuse. I'd never worked with him, but he's the greatest. And it was his idea. He said, dude, I can make it out of steel. I'll do a steel structure and we'll build it in sections that we can click in. And I think before this got to 6 weeks, I think we had 9 weeks, and then it got reduced. And I was just like, I just had the right team. I was like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to build a road on the beach. We're going to build this bar. We're going to crane it in. And we had an amazing PM and a line producer. Everybody was like on board. And also because the way it worked out, we were shooting at the base then. So it kind of ended up in everybody's minds. Once I pitched the idea, it was the best, because Tom always had a secure place to shoot. The beach is private. No one can access it. There's no photographs. There's no reason, there's so much trying to make sure that people don't get photographs of while we're shooting a movie like this, because it would get leaked. So once everybody was on board with that, it was really just the timing was so tight, I think. And I think they brought it up a week early because Tommy saw it being built so fast. I think we might have shot it like 4 or 5 days earlier but we were done. And I mean, it was 7-day weeks. That's not, it's hard for the crew, but it was just, it's we're not going to get to do this again. It was such a special project, and it's Top Gun. It's supposed to be special.
Right. Anyone else? Sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Someone else had their hand up regarding Top Gun, I think, but I think it's down now. Julian, do you see anything?
I do not.
Okay, let's just carry on then. We'll go to the other questions later. Yeah.
So I want to jump over to Spiderhead. And again, working with Joseph Kaczynski. This is, of course, a similar thing to have to consider design-wise, being that it's this bizarre experimental facility that you're building, but this time you really leaned into the brutalist architecture. I'm just wondering how, Joseph being an architect himself, how was it, selling this to him, or did you have to sell it to him?
It's funny because I was like, Joe, what is this place? And he's like, it's concrete, it's brutalist, it's we went through a ton of research, but I said, just sum it up for me. And he said, imagine a spa-like facility in Big Sur that's a prison. I'm like, got it. That was it. And the cool thing was that I was open to, you go on the World Wide Web of exploring, and I found this architect in Poland who was doing this amazing brutalist modern concrete architecture, like today. And none of his stuff has been built yet. He's like this, he's a kid, he's like 32 years old, Adam Spichala. And I kept looking at his stuff. I'm like, Joe, I called the guy, and I'm like, I got a hold of him, and he couldn't speak English, and I obviously don't speak Polish. And I was like, do you want to do a movie with me? Do you want to help design the exterior of this building? I've already designed the interior, but we really need someone I don't want to use a concept artist because I want it to be real. Like, it's based on the way he builds forms. He's a master's in concrete pouring. That's what he studied. And that was it. Like, we just worked on it together for like 6 weeks, 2 months, remotely. It was during COVID, and it wasn't the exterior though. It was just the exterior for him. And it was just that combination of, I had Freddie and Eric, who I always work with, or not always, but I did on Severance, and I worked with them on this project for the interiors, more for a lot for their speed and their taste. And then Eric's was really the exterior, because we knew we're never going to build it. It's going to be visual effects. And this guy was doing texturing like I'd never seen before. Joe had never. He's like, his texturing is amazing.
And they're working in SketchUp?
He doesn't. Oh, he doesn't. He works in I think he works in Maya.
Mm-hmm.
He works in, what is he drawing? Because he's a CAD. He's really an architect. Like, I want him to design my next house. Like, his name is Adam Spichala. Look him up. He's the houses he does are amazing, and but how he does his texture mapping, I don't know. No one, and they are insane. Like his moss, his water, his concrete, like it's so porous, and he just was. So that was a great find. And Joe's cool because you think, okay, this is $100 million movie, and you're picking a young guy in Poland who you're never going to meet, and he's going to help you do the exterior of this building for this movie. I'm like, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
And actually, Joe had done the same thing on Oblivion. He found Daniel Simon, to do the Tron motorcycle. Daniel was in Germany, and he reached out to him. He's a livery designer, and he said, do you want to do the Tron bike with me? Like Joe's kind of he's in the same vein of like, it doesn't matter. It's not about here's the most prestigious person. It's like, here's the right person to do this. And it was really fun. And then, the interior, the whole movie takes place on stage, which we ended up building in Australia during COVID.
Yeah. So the exterior, where was that shot? In Australia as well?
Yeah, we just don't. Oh, they get in the boat just at the beginning. Yeah. We built like that's that's on that's the drinking water for the Gold Coast. That was another thing. I just can't, like, I'm like, we need water, and it can't be on the ocean. And we somehow it let us have electric boats on and one gasoline boat, I think, on their drinking water lake, and we shot it in part of that set.
Wow. So the plane is all CGI then?
The plane is real. The plane's real.
Plane.
We shot Chris in the plane. The pilot's always lying down. He flew sideways. Amazing. Like, this thing is, we'd all come off Top Gun, so we're like, oh, listen, we kept laughing, like, this is the easiest flying we'll ever do. Joe had been through everything, and Tommy, same producer, and Claudio DP. So it was so easy to shoot the airplane stuff. It's all in camera. Chris, actually, the amazing thing is, this movie, the last scene we shot first. Chris had to do the exit first. And then we just met him. We'd flown, Joe and Tommy had just flown in like 3 weeks before, and we shot the ending first because there was this, I think because of Stormwatch, because it was such a big build on the water, and it's a huge this big cantilever, obviously, over the water. So we had a massive black that was the max we could ever put. No one would ever, it was big. And we had to shoot it out.
Wow. And that was the cantilever over the dock for the
just for the shadow line for the plane and for them when they come out. And I mean, obviously it's not the full distance, because I think we could go 80 feet, which is still massive.
Jeez. Wow. And how big was that set completely in the studio?
40,000 square feet.
Wow. Holy
so we built it in 9 weeks. Insane. Best plasterer I've ever worked with in my life. Oh my God, what's Ben's last name? Another young guy. He was the second, and I met him, and he was amazing. It's also was really, I had Tommy is amazing producer, because I interviewed 2 construction coordinators that I loved. And I was like, Tommy, I think we should hire both of them. I don't think we could build this in time with one. They were the 2 best guys in Australia, and we hired both of them. And I called them and said, can you guys do it together? Like, it's just not, you're going to have to like divide and conquer. And they did. And we had such a great time. Amazing. Like, both their crews, everyone pulled everything together.
Yeah.
And it was COVID. So it was like, it wasn't, it was, you couldn't move between states. So everyone had to be from the state of New South Wales. That was it. No one could come from you couldn't get anybody in.
Wow, holy smoke. So this was during COVID. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Grace and I were, I think, in the first couple people to go there. Netflix got us in. It was an interesting quarantine.
So really, from all of this, something that really is sinking in, not that it hasn't in my career, but building the right team, working with, people that you can trust, is one of the most important things. And I think, I've certainly noticed in my career, when I've had the opportunity to work with amazing people, the project completely transcends what you thought it would be to begin with. From scenic artists to carpenters to set designers, and certainly set decorators. And
fabricators. Like this one was, the first time I'd worked with Weta before, but I called Jake, and they built every prop. Like, we designed them all. Everything was, we designed because we were going to shoot this in LA. Then we were going to shoot it in New Mexico. Then we we're going to shoot it in Vancouver. But it was always designed to be in LA before COVID. And then, so we'd had a lot of this, but then we built these all in Weta because they had to be shipped to Australia, and Jake, and they did an amazing, this is the first time I've ever built stuff that I didn't get to see in person until they showed up. and they were all like, they're like, once again, technology gave us the time. I could FaceTime with them. I could see it. I could look at every detail. They'd send me samples. Like if you go back to the vial one, or which one, like those little vials, those are hand blown glass. They're so beautiful. Like everything was like perfect. And it's like, it's the high that I get off on. It's like, how do you make everything perfect? Like it has to be perfect. It's like, this was another Apple thing. This is the Apple iPhone. This size is, when you touch it, it feels real, and it has to work, and the colors, and it's all done in camera. It's like, what I love is and I love visual effects, but I love using visual effects in a way that they're there to enhance what we do, fix things that we can't do, make things better. But the more you can build, the more you really have to put an effort into being exactly what you want it to be, because you're not going to change it. And I think that's a better high than saying, well, we could do it later. It's like, you see it, like it's never going to be the same.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask you two controversial things. One, and I have a feeling I know what your answer will be on the first one. How do you feel about working on volume walls and set designing where you don't actually have the set, where you don't get to travel to the Gold Coast? And do you like it? Do you not like it?
You know what? I went to see, there's a show called 1886 is a German show on a boat. Yeah. I went to see those guys. I went to see that set with Greg Fraser. We popped in, we were shooting a Chanel commercial, and we popped in to visit them. We like literally just walked on their set. It was amazing. And I met the designer, and I met and what they did was amazing, like stunning. And that's the first time I was like, oh, wow. And they had rain effects. They had everything. They built the whole circular idea was built in pie shapes on other stages. So every set was built and approved and taken a piece, and so it could be rolled in and clicked together. Big, huge sets. And I was like, this is mind-blowing what they're doing. And we were watching them shoot a scene, rain effects. But the thing that stumps me is, and it's because you're still doing the same thing. You're going to go out and you're going to see things. You're going to scan them. You're going to do photo geometry. You're going to do the same things. Yeah. You're just going to bring it in that you can shoot in an environment that's more feasible, which is not really, but the only thing was on the boat. And I'm like, so I'm standing on the set of the boat, and I'm like, can I go here to here to here? And they're like, no. And I'm like, because you can't. You can only walk this way, and that person is already the screen. And it's amazing, but it doesn't give the directors I want to work with, the technology is not there to do that, because you're not freely moving. You're only moving 20 feet up, upstage, downstage, upstage, a little bit.
So it has blocking issues, is what you're saying. And that's the
which is, to me, is storytelling issues.
Sure.
But I think for like with Greg on Batman, with the rooftop, with sun, when you want to do a sunset, and here's blue hour, and it's like blue hour, and we need it to be with these actors, and James built an amazing set. That was a brilliant idea of where to use volume. But
I think I'm a huge fan of any technology if it helps us tell the stories better. And I think we're still so early on with the volume walls. We're just beginning to learn how to block and how to move the wall, the imagery within the wall to suit the blocking or create artificial sense of blocking and that sort of thing. But I'm sure
it's also you have to school, like you have to, like I had a producer, quite a big producer, call me and say, hey, we want to do this movie on volume. Will you do it? And I read it, and I'm like, when do you want to shoot? And they're like, in 5 months. I'm like, more like a year and 5 months. Yeah. Like, what? I'm like, well, all the post is done up front. Yeah. And they're like, well, we got to shoot. We have a tax credit. I'm like, I can't do it. And they didn't do it that way. And they didn't make the movie that way. But it's really, and I knew from Greg and friends that have done it, and Greg really kind of invented it with Mandalorian. And I've seen a lot of it, and I've been through the pixel arguments of all of it. And it's definitely there for ideas and spaces, but it's definitely it's great for commercials. What you can do is amazing. Yeah. It's the future. It's just, you got to make, I think it's, for me, it's just personal. Like there's sometimes on Severance, I would totally do it, but you need to have this expensive space and their design team. But the key is, and Chilin's doing an amazing job at this, and the German guys did, and there's if any designer now is working in Real Engine on Unreal, if you're working in Unreal, if you can work in that format, then you're doing visual effects,
Yeah.
and the art department is becoming less, it's going to be becoming a virtual art department where we can do those things. And then it doesn't get subbed out to anyone. There's people in our crews. I have people that can, this guy Billy on Severance with me, who is mind blowing. He goes out, he can 3D scan any area within like a millimeter, do all the photogeometry, build it all real, make it snow, make it do whatever you want in live, and it's and that could be could be enhanced to be in volume. And then as Greg always said, the reason that volume is amazing for designers, and you will love it at some point, is that you have absolute control. Like there's no weather issues.
Yeah.
There's no the location burned down. The country won't let you do it, or so that is freaking cool.
But that's it for worlds that, certainly, we're seeing how much success Star Trek is having here in Toronto with it, and all over the world. With the otherworldly things you can do with volume walls are unbelievable. And I'm like I say, I'm a huge fan of anything that doesn't limit your creativity, but just gives you more and more opportunities. So I absolutely love it. One last thing I was going to ask you about, and I'm not sure if it's even worth asking, but how do you feel about AI in design?
It's funny because you follow. I love the design collective because I see a lot of young people love it. I totally don't get it at all. And it's like I feel old. It's like going from records to see. I know what that feels like. Like I just don't care. I think it's interesting. You look at some of the images, you're like, they're great, but I don't feel anything for them. I don't feel like there's anything that I care about. Yeah.
I mean, myself, I understand the opportunities, definitely.
Yeah.
But, I find myself, I still draw with black wing pencils, and I find that when you're looking at details, especially, the way someone like yourself works, where everything is about these details and controlling what you're looking at. I don't know if I want to give it up to a machine to decide, you punch in, I need, a prison on a beach, or something like that.
Well, it's also just like, it's just math. It's interesting. Like it's like a lot of modern architecture. It's wow architecture. It is, but it doesn't tell you anything.
Well, this is what I'm getting
no
at.
longevity to it.
It's the decision making that is the important thing. Design is all about decision making, right?
And the accidents. How many times you've been on a set and you're like, or like I'm doing one right now, and a painter does something wrong, and then you come back and you're like, oh, and it's like that. It doesn't mean you stay with that one, but it changes your course of direction. And that's never going to happen. That's never going to happen in AI. It'll never happen on volume ever. Like when it's the more controlled things get, humans get really boring. We are the best. Like I remember Bruce McDonald was great. I love Bruce. I remember we were shooting Dance Me Outside. And, the movie was on a reserve and it wasn't the right, but I remember Bruce turning around saying, that's what we should be shooting. And it's like, I learned that instantly, that you should always, even if you set something up as a designer, if something happens and you have to leave it to do that, that's the most important thing, is to know when not to do it. When to say that the story is better right there, even though, but this is great. It's like, it doesn't matter. You're going to do a million great sets. Let go of them. It's more, is it going to tell a story that makes people feel something and love something, is what we do. Right?
Yeah, certainly. But that's the decision making. That again is part of the design process, as far as I'm concerned. Having the wherewithal to look in the other direction, as we said right at the beginning. Go around that next corner and go, hold on. I know the story says it was set in this kind of a room, but there is this amazing room right here. Or as you're going through the design discoveries from your research, from your, whatever kind of reference you're looking at, to be able to say, I'm going to choose this over this because, it just serves our story so much better. So
I'm more just baffled why people want it. I get that it's here because companies can manufacture it and sell you and make you watch things
yeah,
to sell you shit, which is why it's designed. It's not designed to say, wow, it was better. It's just to keep people occupied on phone.
Yeah.
So I get it. I think the only reason we're here personally is to tell stories. And tell stories is what make people happy, because life is suffering, and how do we not suffer is by telling stories. And it doesn't matter how we tell them. And why do we want to hear it from some stupid friggin' vendor and advertise? We don't. That's all it is.
yeah. Speaking of telling stories, we could tell stories all day, but we should probably answer some of these questions.
Okay, I'll read. There's several in the thing, so I'll just be like a little disembodied voice here, and I mean you can see them, but I'll just read them so you can kind of focus on it. So the first one is from Seth Brown, and Seth, do you want to step up to the plate, or do you just want me to read the question out? Put your hand up if you'd like to actually be a voice and a face on this question, if you're still here. Hey, raise your hand. Okay, yeah. So Seth, Julian, you're gonna let Seth in, right?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey guys, thank you so much. This has been great to listen to, both of you guys. My question was, I just graduated film school this year, and I've had a great opportunity to do a lot of music videos and commercials as a production designer, and I love it. But it was really cool hearing you guys say how you kind of went from, I don't know, where I am now to where you guys are now. And I was just kind of wondering what advice would you have for someone who's new to the game, to kind of make that jump, to kind of get out of these non-union music videos and commercials, and to just keep going and learning and stuff? Like, what would you say?
I mean, honestly, I would say keep doing commercials and music videos. Get some money, because learning to do with the money is the hardest part of the job. Learning to get the money from these people is the hardest. And you can learn it faster in commercials and music videos. A movie, like if you can do 40 jobs in a year, and what you'll learn is that the commerce really affects how you can design something. And it's to me, it was the best way to learn. Like I built so many crazy sets in commercials, where in movies you could get on a movie and like no one's gonna let you build a set. You're just dressing sets, which is totally fine. It just depends what kind of designer you want to be. But if you want to learn, that to me is the best place to learn. But the hardest part is don't get sucked into the money, because the money can be really good, and then movies will pay less when you start. So it's kind of like I would try and do both, but I think just you got to fail, dude, a lot. Fail as many times as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my background is exactly what your background is. I started in music videos and commercials, and it really, as Jeremy says, was this huge learning curve, but at the same time gave me such a great foundation. Jeremy and I were just discussing this last week, and as we were with Marion, and saying how, like, the idea that you dipped your toe in so many opportunities in commercials, you learn so many things, and of course you fail. I mean, God, I could tell you disaster after disaster from commercials and music videos, but you eventually get to know people more and more. And when you're a few years into your career, you're going to start to meet actors and directors, and this is exactly what happened with Jeremy. Was meeting the bigger name directors and DPs got him where he is. And with me, I befriended Saul Rubinek, and he invited me to production design his first feature film as a director, and that was really it. And that's when I really realized I really like long format, and wanted to move into the extended storytelling. But you're on the right path, it sounds like. I mean, I would keep doing that.
You know what I think of the cool thing is it's a super long journey, and all I think designers hit their prime in their 60s. All my heroes are 60s and 70s, like Rick Carter. I love him to death. Rick's 74. Jack Fisk is 76. Janine Openwall. I mean, these people you do amazing work. You need the biggest bag of tricks to do what we do. Yeah. And you need to know when you build something underwater, how it's going to survive. You need to build something that's going to survive a snowstorm. Like you kind of have to learn on You need to learn on other people's money.
I have to laugh because Jeremy, I heard you in an interview talking about the hangars that you had to build for Top Gun, and how you had to build them in the winter, and of course the scenic artists were struggling to get the paint to dry, and
Yeah, they're from Los Angeles. They never painted in anything cold,
I
and they're painting a metal hanger in -10 Celsius.
and many years ago
Blizzard.
I learned that lesson in a music video when I built a set for Crash Vegas in the Don Valley in the middle of winter, and we painted this exterior wall, just a doorway that they could walk through in the music video. And when we came back from lunch, the sun had come around the other side, and this paint that I thought was now dry was actually just frozen and had melted off the wall. It basically thawed and creeped down the wall, but it created this incredible texture, and it was a music video.
Yeah.
So,
No.
but I learned that lesson in music videos. So
Let's
learn with your failures. Yeah.
no, they're
Yeah.
amazing, and sometimes it's some of the best things you do.
Yeah.
Is that good,
Yeah.
Seth? Get that?
That's, yeah,
There you
that is amazing. Thank you guys so much. That is
Tracking.
very encouraging
Okay.
to hear. I appreciate it a lot.
Oh, Seth, can I tell you one more thing?
Of
I
course.
find a lot of designers I know don't do this, and a lot of art director people who want to be designers don't always work really close with everyone. Your decorator, the props person, like don't think, yeah, they got this. They don't. They need, you are there to control the look of the entire thing. I work with so many young designers who are like, yeah, but that's the decorator's job. It's like, no. It is. They're amazing, but you have to be involved in every detail, like every thread. You have to know why it's there, and you want to make sure then you'll, because later in 20 years, like a good friend of ours, Dorte, said to me, like when I was first starting out, he said, oh, I can't wait to see your reel in 10 years to see who you are. Because in about 10, it takes 10 years of work of your own to see that you actually have a look. You don't realize you do, but you'll see it eventually. And that's what's interesting. Even with all the people you work with, it'll eventually have your thing.
Thank
That's
you. That is
Great thing.
in- incredible to hear. Yeah. I wish I could talk to you guys all day, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, so Travis Frame has two questions. The first one's to you, David.
Mhm.
How did, and I'll read both questions and then you can go back and answer. So the first one is for David. How did the jump from production designer to director work for you? Was it similar to making jumps within the art department in terms of what you learned with the big jump? Question mark. And then Jeremy's question is, how did you approach projects rooted in reality like Zero Dark 30 from a more abstract and sci-fi project like Severance? So two different kind of questions, but they're both from Travis. And Travis, do you want to, I read your question, sorry. I didn't give you that option. Do you want to show your face, or do you want to get back onto the speaker so you can talk more?
Travis.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
First of all, thank you so much for doing this talk. And yeah, that's the gist of my questions. And just to add a little bit on the end, so I'm soon to be a architecture graduate, hoping to do what you guys do, and just to kind of tack on to each of those questions for you individually. For a question for you both, how do you think I can take my background in architecture and bring it and that kind of design perspective into this world of filmmaking?
Yeah. Well, listen, my whole younger life, I thought I was going to be an architect. I wanted to be an architect. I loved architecture. Would spend Saturdays at the library, just like looking through books, and went off to the University of Waterloo for a couple of bad years of school and decided I liked making money better. So I moved back to Toronto and got my first gig at a company called Champagne Motion Pictures, working in the art department. And because I knew how to design sets and could do construction drawings and whatnot, I went right into art directing within, I think, about 6 months. So, you're off to a good start already, graduating architecture. And congratulations, by the way. And then once I was in the film business, I realized it was home. It just felt right for me. And I realized I'd always been into entertainment and the entertainment business. And I just never thought of it as my final career. But I went into directing, I guess, music videos and commercials within about 6 or 7 years of entering the film business, just because I was at a busy company and a creative director at an agency asked me to direct a commercial because he liked my ideas when I was art directing a commercial. So that sort of got me into directing. And I think, I was able to sort of put both hats on for a long time through the 90s. And then when I had my chance to production design for Saul Rubinek, it really was this kind of aha moment where, I really, oh no, you know what? I was actually working on Lex, I think, around that time too. And they asked me to second unit direct as well. Sometimes, we had 5 studios going, and they would call me down to say, can you just get the 4 guys walking out of the door or something like that. And so I sort of dabbled in both directing, production designing at the same time. And then by the time Saw rolled around on Saw 2, I was hired as production designer on the second Saw movie. And Darren Bousman, who directed Saw 2, he was I think he was only about 26 or 27 at the time, right out of film school. And they just said, help him along with things like, the blocking and that sort of thing. And so they had me also second unit direct Saw 2. That turned into Saw 3 and Saw 4, second unit directing and production designing. And then finally on Saw 5, they gave me the chance. And I built up the trust with Lionsgate, with the producers, and certainly had, by that point, directed every one of the main actors in the Saw franchise. So it's building trust in people. So that's kind of the transition. It was pretty organic. It wasn't so planned out. It was me just being willing to step up to the opportunities. So yeah. And Jeremy.
What was your question again? It was you're an architect, and what should you do? I think so.
Yeah,
pretty much.
yeah. I'm about to graduate as an architecture student, and just kind of, especially working with Mr. Kaczynski and his background in architecture. How has that helped you with design on his projects, and how do you think an architecture background could help me going forward and how I approach things?
It's funny because I have there's a lot of architects in film, especially in they're all draw. That's something you have to be careful of. Probably the first thing I'd say, I'm going to be really blunt. You have to be careful because you can draw, everyone will just want you to draw. And if you want to design, you should get the app Artemis, and you should learn lenses. It's the most important thing that designers need to know, are all the lenses. And what is the ratio of the film? How do you build something to be shot is so different than architecture. But you have an up though, because you can design something and draw something. It's a huge gift. But then you have to learn that the best thing is you can build anything. It doesn't have to last. It can fall over. There's no engineering necessarily. It's really, you get to design something that you think tells the story the best. But the key is to, I would say, travel as much as you can, see as much as you can, eat. It's mostly knowing people and having a catalog of information and aesthetics and furniture and design and all those things. Be obsessed about them all, and because you're going to need them all. The designer's package is big. The art director's is drawing, and it's just, if that's the route is to be a designer, then you make sure you have all those other traits and just work really hard on them. And I would definitely no lenses. I hope you take a lot of pictures. Doesn't matter what on. You can take it on an iPhone. You'll see quickly what things look like, because you need to tell the story through a lens.
Okay, good. Or do you still want to ask about the difference between designing for something like Zero Dark 30, high realism, with a more abstract sci-fi project? We have quite a few other questions. So
the cool thing is, I think it's the same. I don't think there's anything for me. Whatever I design, I want to work on, I think it has to be. You have to believe it. And I'm a big believer in Twin Peaks. It's one of my favorite shows ever in history. And I did Severance because I thought it was my version of Twin Peaks. I still believe Twin Peaks. It's insane, but I believed it because the design is so good. The simplicity, there's no different to me. It's just, if you're watching it and you can go into it and disappear in it, then it worked. Whether it's realism or fantasy. I've watched Blade Runner 1,000 times. I still believe it. And I know those buildings in LA, but I believe every second of it and every inch of it because it was done so well. That's to me, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to move on to the next question. Travis, thanks for your question.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for answering my questions. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ivana Ramos, did you want to give your own question out, or do you want me to read it? Still here? Yes. Okay. She doesn't seem like she's here, but she has, hello, and thanks for the amazing insights. My name's Giovanna, and I'm in my first years of art assisting after graduating in film in 2019. What are your suggestions to keep your work inspired and fresh? You've kind of answered that a bit, Jeremy and Dave both. Also, in general, how to have film work in a more consistent way in the industry? Well, so I think you've kind of answered.
But we figured out Collins.
Yeah.
But can I add something to the last one? Just because it just came to me, and I think, and the architect, go to every art gallery you can, see every show you can, see art, see paintings. Go see the Edward Hopper in New York right now at the Met, or not at the Whitney. It's really, paintings to me are the key to everything, especially lighting, which is really production design. We do all the lighting. Everybody, you have to design the lighting too in mind. But sorry, I'll go back to the next question. I just really wanted him to know that. David, you go.
Well, I'm going to say, consistent work is really just a matter of, sort of like leading into your next question about showcasing your work. That's one of the ways is to, learn to showcase your work, but also learn who everyone is in your industry, and, have an idea of where you want your career to go. I mean, don't be like me. I've done games, I've done IMAX movies, documentaries, you name it. At the same time, as Jeremy said, learn everything, because every one of those things was a huge lesson. I've never, to this day, had a boring day in the film business. You always learn something new on every project, something big, something small, but you learn something new. Showcase your work. A website is probably one of the best ways to showcase your work, as far as I'm concerned, because it's the easiest to access. I was one of the very early adopters in Toronto when websites were just starting out, and in the mid to late 90s, I had a website, and in about a week, I went from a guy who was sending VHS tapes to producers with my last couple of commercials on it to somebody who, when I got on the phone with the producer, they would say, "Can you send me some of your portfolio or your reel?" And I would say, "You already have it." And I remember a producer being on the phone, and I could hear him opening up my website, and he was blown away by it, and it really, it really got me work. But it is also a matter of knowing the right people to send it to. Certainly, you want to have some insight into who's who. And now the wonderful thing is you can go on social media and find everybody you want. You can easily build your own website with so many great website apps. So, keep promoting your work, and that will really help. And don't be rude, but be consistent. Like I have certain people that call me or that send me an email, just a little quick email every month or two, and just say, "Hey, I'm not working right now, looking for a job. If you need an art director or, an assistant director or whatever, keep doing that." It's if you do it in the right way, it's not rude, so don't become annoying, but obviously developing relationships is a great. Next question.
That's great. So next question is from Celine de Capite. Celine, are you here, and do you want to ask your own question? Yes, Julian, she is here.
Hi, thank you so much. I just graduated from my Master's of Business, and I have a background in art history. And I'm just looking to get into the film industry. I have such a passion for how things look, like Jeremy was saying, in art pieces, and I'm starting to build a portfolio. And I guess this is going to be combined of both my questions. But what would you include if you have to start over again in your portfolio to show these people, that you're presenting this portfolio to, and, to make these large scale drawings? How would you go about it? I guess that's a twofold question. So
I guess it depends what it's for. I mean, every time you go for an interview, you kind of have to make something new. Like I never had a stock thing that was like, oh, I'll send this out. It's like, I think you need to know who the person is and what the project is and how you want to approach them. They're always different. It's really personal. And I think you want to make sure that you know enough about where you're going that you personalize it. So you create a story to tell them when you're pitching yourself. Like, I think it's what humans respond to. I think if you just show something and you don't have any reason why, there's a million people that have something. It's like, how do you stand out? And how do you have something that people are attracted to? And usually it's the person that I'm mostly excited about and want to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Celine, you had a second part, or first part actually, about when starting a ground plan for something of a large scale like Severance or Spiderhead, where do you start? How do you unfold that plan for multiple sets at that scale? Which is, I think, an interesting question.
It's like, I had an amazing producer like 20 years ago tell me it's like eating an elephant. You have to take small bites. And you can't take a big bite. So you just start small and it grows. There's no physical way I personally could do it. You just can't. It's just work. You just get in, and the first one and the next one, and it just starts to go when you get a flow, and you'll have tons of time when it doesn't, and it's hard, but it's mostly taking small bites.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great advice. I don't know
Actually,
if David, you have to...
and the other part is hard is producers, everybody, they always want it right away. And you can say, I don't have it. And you have to know when to say, I don't have it. If they want it all and you give it to them, it might be pretty shitty. And you want to make sure that what you're giving them is what you want. And I find the hardest part is withholding. Like, people hate me. They're like, no, we need to see it. I'm like, I don't have it. I don't have it.
Yeah.
And you don't. And it's better to say, I don't have it. I don't like it. And you have every right to do that. And if eventually you run out of time, and you have to be good about it. You're not being, you have to be smart about it, but you have to know when you're not ready to release something and hold on to it and be sure of it. And I think, it's really hard.
I can say I've probably got in trouble more often because I said yes to a producer too soon than because I said no. Because I hadn't explored something long enough, hadn't really, taken into account certain factors in the job. And most often these questions start to answer themselves. Certainly when you're working on a production, you'll find that you'll head in one direction, and all of a sudden something will happen, like an actor's schedule changes, and you put the brakes on and you have to start all over again, or just shift direction really quickly. And if you say yes to something too soon, you could be spending money or design time that you don't need to. And you can get people really pissed off. So
it's also like, it's an art department. You have a lot of people with you. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it's only two, but it could be 100. And you kind of want all their ideas. Like, you need them all. The best directors are amazing. They'll just go, what do you like? What do you like? What do you like? And then you do the same thing to your crew. What do you like? Ask the painter, what do they like? I mean, you have to utilize everyone.
Great answers, thanks. So Jessica Pignataro, I know she's had to leave, but she's going to get the link, so I'll ask her question. Great presentation, thank you. Can you elaborate a bit more on your approach to the lighting design plan, installation, and all things practical, please? Your philosophy, methodology, tips for do's and don'ts, things you love, challenges on set, unexpected solutions. Anyway, it's all pertaining to lighting particularly. What comes to mind would be greatly appreciated knowledge to share. Thanks.
Can I just say one thing that I learned very early on? As a production designer, I had to start putting tops on all my sets because I worked with some DPs who would take the opportunity to just throw a light over the top edge and light it like a soap opera. And so I just went, fuck that, I'm doing it my way. And I would indicate where windows are going or light boxes will go, where practicals will go. Sometimes not put any windows in a set and just light it all with practicals. As Jeremy said, a giant part of production designing is the lighting as well. Not to negate what DPs do, because they are incredible, clever human beings that I love working with, but work with them together collaboratively, and really look at the best of the best, and Claudio Miranda, of course, that Jeremy's just been working with, is one of the best out there. And right now on Instagram, he's got a little seminar about just lighting with candles and practical light, and not using any lighting heads at all. So and it's brilliant. Look at the really great DPs and see what their work is, and see why their work is what it is, and you'll see that they work really closely with with their production design team. I just think about a show I did many years ago working with Alar Kivalo, who is a phenomenal DP, who's shot all kinds of wonderful things, and is now off doing Foundation, I believe. And I walked into a set in the back of this old farmhouse we'd built in the studio, and there was just a bowl of apples in a wooden bowl on this table. And I have never seen such a beautiful still life as that, because he had just blammed one light through a side window, and it was breathtaking. I stopped and got my camera and went and took a picture of it because it was so beautiful. So, work with great DPs really helps.
It's interesting with Alar. I just add that, he also is someone who really relies on paintings, looks at paintings a lot. He's a depth of knowledge about paintings, so that is a really informative source for him too.
Yeah, for sure.
Caitlin Chalk, are you here? Did you want to ask your question? No, I guess she's not here. Do you have any suggestions for fleshing out a portfolio for a set deck? I assume she's a set decorator, or researching when you're not able to physically be working on any productions. I'm not quite clear. Can you guys offer anything? Do you have any suggestions for fleshing out a portfolio for set deck, or researching when you're not able to physically be working on any productions? So I think it means she's a set decorator and wants to know what kind of portfolio to put together, and also how can you build your research when you're not really on a show. That's what I'm interpreting there.
Yeah.
You could do some mood boards that you pull from sources, where you give yourself a little design problem and say, if I was to build this kind of a set, a machine shop or butcher shop or something like that, put it together and say, here's the things I really like. Here's reference that I would probably bring to you. Of course, it always helps if you have a few things you can put in there that are real. But for the most part, it really comes down to, I want to know what your taste is, and I want to know what you're like as a person to work with, right?
Absolutely. I'd say that's kind of it.
Caitlin, she just put a thing in the chat. Her mic wasn't working. So anyway, thanks for answering your question. Next one, Antonia Sin. Work-life balance question. Are you here, Antonia? I can just ask. Nothing's coming up. How do you manage work-life balance? What are some practical skills you think every production designer should have? And when you mentioned that Top Gun was a 7-day-a-week job, I thought, oh boy, this question is going to come up. So anyway, what do you have to say about work-life balance?
That's a good one.
When I actually did Zero Dark 30, I was so lucky. I had this supervising art director, Rod McLean from England, who was he's like a godfather. He's just amazing. Munich. I don't know. So many ridiculous movies. And he took me aside the first couple of weeks, and he's like, dude, it's 6:30, you're leaving. And I'm like, what? He goes, I don't want to see you after 6:30. You need to be away from here. You can do whatever you want, but you're not allowed to be here. 7 max. Leave. You have to pitch yourself. You will not survive 110 sets in 3 continents. And I did. And whether I would walk, I'd walk home. I'd still do work later, probably, because I was away. I was like, I didn't have my family with me. So but it just trained me instantly to know that I only do like 11 hours a day, and I rarely work longer. And then once I had kids, you don't have the choice, which is great. You go home and they need you. So, but if you don't, I personally, I think you can get so much done. It's just structure your time and leave. Because to me, I learned a lot is the daydreaming time is way better than the sitting there time. You can't sit and get anything done. I just don't. I don't personally. I just sit there. I need my brain to relax to come up with more ideas and not feel guilty about it.
And
Good movie.
I would add, bring your family places.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let your family come to place. I've been so many times in far off places, and my family gets to come and spend Christmas in Vancouver, or
Yeah.
lived in Nova Scotia for a while, Berlin, all over the world. It's My kids love it. My kids are very worldly now because they've been to all these places. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I know Jeremy, yours are as well.
Anonymous attendee, I'll read the question. As an indie film director, what is the best way to prepare for a conversation with the production designer? Is there a thing of being too specific or too unspecific? What's the language that directors should be using? Pictures or storyboard? Question mark.
I would say all of the above. I mean, as Jeremy said, and I will attest to, we're both picture guys. I mean, I see in pictures, I think in pictures. You say the word cat, I don't have any abstract concept of a cat. I see a picture in my head of my cat. But pictures are, for me, one of the best ways to communicate with me, whether as a production designer or as a director, going the other way. So references, certainly photo references, movie references, but sometimes even music, sometimes music and anything that inspires you. Paintings, as Jeremy said, are really important. Sometimes it'll be one particular image that inspires a whole film, So definitely know your photographers, know your cinematographer. This guy right here, Jeremy Hindle, is a maniac for, he could probably tell you just about any cinematographer on any movie, who shot it, who the production designer was, that sort of thing. Learn that stuff. And pull references like crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really going to come down to the person you just meet, Yeah. But I do think images to me are the best, because it's not just, it's like lighting, color, why you like it. Scale is so massive to me in filmmaking. You could talk about one image and you can get the gist of what somebody sees in it. And here's the thing too, is as a director, you don't have to know this stuff. Tarantino always said it. You don't need to know it. You can, like Catherine likes to let it go. You can say, I want you to do all this and I want you to help me do it. And that's what a director's job can be. It doesn't, when I grew up, we were just sold that directors did everything. Like it was Coppola, it was Martin Scorsese. Nobody talked about Dante Ferretti, that he was the master, this amazing designer, and the cinematographers, and so we really were raised that it was a director. It's like the director is like the person. It's like they're casting for their people, and if you fit into, if the designer wants to fit in with that mix, who's going to light it, how are they going to light it, are you shooting film, are you shooting digital, like there's a million things. And it's just be open to and be honest with them how you want to do it, so that you get what you want.
Okay, I think those are good answers. Olivia Semenstova, are you here? Olivia? No? Okay. Thanks for this. Very informative for both of you. When do you hire a concept artist? What do you look for? You said you hired based on the project. So is that a particular field you look for in the artist work, or is it something else?
For me, at Top Gun, I only use Jamie Rama, who I've worked with for almost 18 years. He only did Top Gun. I was like, I was adamant that it was just him and I on that film. Sometimes I bring in other people because I think their talents are better for different ways of visual storytelling. Eric or Freddie, there's so many amazing guys, girls. Joanna Bush is one of my favorites. She's amazing. And it's particular on what scene it is and how you want to work together with them on it. It's always, to me, very different. Sorry, David. Where did David go?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know where David went. Anyway, Olivia, is that I saw your chat notice that you're here. Did you have anything further you wanted to ask about that? No? Okay. Carolyn Swift. I'm wondering how important, is Carolyn, are you here? Do you want to ask your own question? I'd like to give people that agency if they're here. No? Okay.
Geez, even David left.
Huh?
Even David left.
There's still 119 people here. I'm wondering how important your base city is if you want to get to production designing. I'm from Montreal and worked for a few years on small productions and small commercials as a decorator or art director, burnt out on projects that couldn't afford to pay me. Moved to Vancouver 4 years ago to get bigger film industry experience. Been set dressing and on set dressing since, and have started teaching myself design programs. I worked on a few indies here, but haven't found many stories that inspired me enough to go broke again doing passion projects. Oh yeah, those. I haven't met that many directors, producers here. When I speak to directors on set, I often get told to go to Toronto. There are more chances to meet people there. Have you moved? What is your advice on choosing cities to be in and in meeting people that you like working with who can bring you to the next level? You've answered some of this, but just
I mean, ultimately, I moved to Los Angeles 18 years ago. I loved Toronto. I worked with Mary. I worked with everybody there. For me, I felt like I needed to be in the biggest place for myself to be surrounded by the most people possible that make movies, which is in LA. I don't know if it's true, but for me, it was great because it is so busy. It's not as busy as it was because now New York is probably even busier. Like there's places that are busier. I definitely think you need to be in a busy city to stay really busy. You do. You need to be in a place that has enough work that you can find different work and try things. I think try as many things as you can is the best. It's just so Los Angeles, New York, Toronto for sure. I mean, Vancouver is super busy. I'm surprised, but it's a little kind of a quiet town. It's not my favorite. I want to be surrounded by art. And I think big cities are good for that.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. Thank you, Mary. Thanks for, I don't know if either of you wanted to elaborate before I jump in there.
Nope. David?
No, I mean, look, I live in Toronto, but I rarely work here. So, but that's just because I'm doing independent movies that tend to shoot off in other places, and I like to go other places. So I pick stories that are, shot in wonderful, exciting environments. But
Is that where you started out? Like I when I was thinking of leaving Montreal, Montreal is like if you can work in both languages, there's a bit of a cap sometimes. Because I think distribution tries to stay internal and things try to stay a bit inter-Quebec, but not always, but sometimes. But it was a bit of like a toss-up of, okay, if I'm Canadian, then I either go to Vancouver or Toronto. And I agree with you, Jeremy, that there's a bit of art, I think, lacking in Vancouver, and I get a bit restless with the size of this city. But I've been working quite steadily.
Are you from Montreal?
Yeah, originally, yeah.
That's kind of look where you're from. You're in a great,
Sure.
You're in a great city.
Sure. I'm in Vancouver now.
Yeah.
I've worked more here, and I've gotten more experience working on bigger shows here. But it seems like a lot of directors and producers will bring sort of their key people in from out of Vancouver, and so I just don't really know. I'm open to relocating again. I just don't know how to make a plan for sort of maximizing.
Are you trying you want to be a designer one day or a director? What is it? You want, designer. I mean, are you Franco? Do you speak French?
I'm bilingual. I have a French citizenship. I can work in most EU countries. I just don't know how to use. I don't know anybody there, so.
I mean, the thing is in Quebec, the cool thing in Quebec is you still make so many French movies and they are amazing. Like if you're really particular in story, I don't know, it seems I know they still make a lot. They don't make any English ones there, but they're French. Like Jessica's done some amazing projects there. It's definitely like Vancouver's transient. So it's like being in Atlanta, like everyone's going to be brought in because they're mostly LA based films that are geared up and then they're already prepping somewhere and then they unleash and go somewhere. So it's hard to be in a city and get those jobs. I find depends. I mean, I would go to Europe if I were you.
Yeah.
If you can, I would go work in Europe. It's amazing. Like if you Berlin's amazing right now, and Prague. And if you're up to relocating, I love it. Like that, I'd go anywhere to work in a different environment if you can. You know, Vancouver to me, and I don't know, I haven't shot there. I've shot there many times, but it's very people go there for the stages and for the tax credit, and a lot of it's Marvel. It's that kind. It depends what it is, but if you're really into interesting storytelling, I'd say it's probably more in Europe.
Do you would either like what do either of you, I guess, recommend for just sort of jumping in without knowing anybody in those cities? Because it seems like if the world is your oyster and everything is wide open spaces and open range, and you can choose anything anywhere and you have very little constraints, where do you start to try to help yourself?
Well, I would say don't go in cold. I mean, the wonderful thing now is you can travel the world internationally on the internet, right from your laptop, and get to know people, get to know who's who in those places. Look for what production's going on. I mean, if you're going to go to Barcelona, learn who all the production companies are in Barcelona, and send a note just saying, hey, I'm a an art department person from Canada, but I've got my EU passport. Looking for work. I'm coming for a little while, and then see what kind of response you get. Or you can just go and land on the ground and start to meet people. You'll meet people pretty quick. I mean, the nice thing about film sets is there's, it's a little crowd and you get to sort of know who's who. And, but I would also say aim high when you're going to do it, try to meet the good people, because every city has those little tiny film companies that are pumping out an industrial or just doing music videos. And while that's a good place to jump off too, it's a good place to get in, especially if you're not really experienced. Aim high, learn, even if you start small, when you get somewhere, learn who the good people are as soon as you can, who's making the real commercials or music videos or movies.
Is that good, Caroline?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay. And just a reminder, if you want to, you have to put your hand up if I read your question out and you want to kind of be vocal here. Okay. So just, it's a little, Julian put it in the chat, but you have to, when I call out your name, put up your hand if you want to speak out. Abby Thorley. Abby Thorley is their hand.
Abby?
Hi, Jeremy. Hi, David. Thank you so much for your talk today. I actually wanted to ask you a question. Earlier, Jeremy, you mentioned that with Twin Peaks, you really, the thing that makes that show great is that you really disappear into the story. And I was wondering how you try to ensure that production design of the project you're working on is something you can disappear into, and that it's emotionally, it grabs people and it, gets into their subconscious. How do you try and ensure that, from your sketches, from your design perspective, how do you, reach that kind of emotive point?
I mean, I think that's really with the director and the cinematographer. Like, you really are a team to try and and you have to all be on the same page. Like, it's really weird. It's super hard in a film to say that's going to happen. It takes the director. Like, Ben on Severance is Severance. Ben is the key to Severance. He's so, his attention to detail is mind blowing, and mine is, and Jessica. So the three of us are super ADD, HD plus. And because we're equal and aggressive about it, it's kind of why it is that way. It's really have to be with the right people to do that. Like, David Lynch was like that. Patty Norris is amazing designer and costume designer. She did the pilot. Like, it's working with those people in all knowing. It's that team. You need to be on the same page. Hard. You're going to do projects that won't work. That's what film is, or that doesn't necessarily happen. But it's really the key is picking the right people to do your projects with, I think.
I was also going to say that part of getting creating worlds that you just fall into is if it's a realistic world, for example, like when Jeremy went to Zero Dark 30, it was about the research and about getting a sense of the place, getting a sense of what this story is about. Are there people walking down the street, walking their bicycles, or are they driving by in trucks? Are there other dogs barking at everyone's house? Is there, kids playing in the street outside of Bin Laden's house, or is it dead quiet? I love this scene in the movie where you just hear like the roosters crowing in the morning. It's like that's a sense of realism really helps to make you fall into a story, helps me certainly fall into a story. But then when you get into fantastical worlds, it really is taking the care to create a language for that story. Tamara Deverell, who might still be on this, if she's not already asleep in Nova Scotia. Tamara is fantastic at that, working with Guillermo del Toro to create these beautiful environments that are so much their own language each time that you just drop right into the story and are paying attention to that. I mean, I personally look at Tamara's work and I'm looking at the background because that's what I do. But I really find that I fall into a story so easily because the care is taken to just have a singular vision of it.
Great answers. Good question and great answers. Okay, we got 15 minutes and quite a few more questions, but I'll keep plowing through. Apologies to, I'm going to just read the questions out just to try to make sure that questions are addressed. Okay, M. Khan asks, since design is about communicating ideas, as designer, we should have quick ways of sharing. Is there any specific technique that you have seen working for you better than others? Do you prioritize film or the quality of finish?
Is that different? Is that in the same line of the questioning? I'm not sure I understand.
Well, that last one is a kind of second question. So since design is about communicating ideas, as a designer, we should have quick ways of sharing. Is there any specific technique that you have seen works for you better than others? And then I think let's answer that first. I see. Well, do you prioritize the time or the quality of the finish, I guess, in whatever you're sharing?
Quality, definitely.
Quality. Time is time's like your enemy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to throw this in there. What about this quick sketch? Like you're on a survey and you see something, you have a quick idea, a thumbnail sketch that you do by hand.
I quite often use my iPad on a survey, and will take a picture of what I feel is the frame, and then take that into Procreate and draw right on my photograph as a way to, whether I'm working with as a director or working as a production designer. That's one of the fastest ways. And then I can take that and I can email that right out. I can sometimes send it right to a storyboard artist and say, here's what it's going to look like. There's your background. That's the exact shot right there.
It is the best tool for sure.
Yeah, you can take Artemis.
Especially if you use Artemis, you're giving the exact frame. You're giving all the time, the lighting. You're giving out all the information. It's amazing.
You can
I'd say Artemis and an iPad.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it's time and quality. It's both. But
I guess it depends. Like fast is something I try not to think about. If you can, that's the best way is iPads are amazing. iPhones, iPads, incredible for sure.
Yep.
That's kind of the only, if it, and there are definitely times you have to, but yeah, it's kind of the best tech for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Anonymous attendee, what would you say is the best place, resource for finding music video or commercial opportunities? I assume this means designing them. So
the bathroom wall at the Horseshoe. No, I don't know. I'm so out of that world now. I don't know.
I mean, now it's so different because we're in a different, like Grace would be someone that, it's more Instagram based. It's more social media based. I always believed in an agent. I've always had an agent for as long as I can remember now. You really need that partner who has to get you to directors. You really need to get to directors. That's all you can care about is how do I get to a director? How do I get to a director? How do you get to David? How do you get, you need to get to these people that you want to work with. Make the list of who you want to work with. I have mine. And you try to get to those directors and you and you need an agent as much. And if you're just starting out, you've got a lot of work that you probably don't like, but you're going to learn a lot. You just got to take them, do it. And then you'll meet the right producer, the right, it's like, you're always going to, I don't know, starting us just, there's no right or wrong way to do it. I would say just get as much work as you can.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I'm only going to have time for about 2 more questions. Just want to wrap it up. Shahrukh Hassan, yeah, he put this in the chat, but I told him to put it in here. So this is Sharukh's question. I have been an art coordinator on a few projects and dabbled as a designer on small projects. I had been fortunate to have had a few art director production designers who were kind enough to take time to teach and explain from top to bottom how each facet works. Do you have mentors along the way? And if so, what was one important thing they've taught you that helped you in your careers? Are you yourselves mentors to young designers? Good question.
I can say that early in my career, the production designers I worked with were definitely mentors. And all of them had their own kind of brilliant qualities to them. Bill Fleming, who is a phenomenal production designer, director, producer, does everything. Bill does everything, knows everything, but his superpower is his theater background, really, and his ability to turn nothing into something every time. And everyone that worked taught me something. So the directors I worked with coming up, certainly the cinematographers, set decorators I worked with, everybody, construction people. It's really just a matter of latching onto people and tapping them for what knowledge they might have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I love mentoring. I've definitely had lots of mentors. I love it. I always tell, whenever I start a show, I tell every PA that they're always welcome in my office whenever they want. They can come in anytime. Like, it's open door, unless I'm napping. But it's really is like, I don't know, you just have to ask a lot of questions. You just do. Like, and I have a girl I mentor right now in England, Tiger Lily. She's awesome, that I met last year in Greece. And it's really good to just kind of try and watch someone go and mentor them and be there. And it's how you guide someone in this industry is so bizarre to me. It's more just letting them know that they're, especially a designer, that you're allowed to be free. It's not taught. It's just, there's certain skills and you can learn them, and you can learn them online. You can learn on real. There's so many things you can learn, but it's mostly just who do you want to be and what do you want to do? And I like to really mentor people to be that, like, inspirational themselves. Because when you're designing, it's so hard. You can't, for the first 100 jobs you're going to do, you're going to try and design for the director or the producer. You're going to try and design for them, and you realize you can't. You have to design what you want with them, but it has to have you in it to be really good and to enjoy it. Because it's so hard to guess what somebody wants, and you'll try it. I find we all tried it, and then it's like but I want to mentor younger people they don't have to try as long as probably some of what I did, or I'm sure David, you did. Like, it's hard. It's really learn to, like, trust yourself and your own instincts and feel free with them, and that you're good enough to do it. Because I'm telling you, you're still going to win an award one day, and you're going to feel like a fraud. Everyone has that in them. That never goes away.
Yeah.
And my best advice was from Peter Cohen, an AD who I love, whose first job was C3POs. He was the guy that lit his cigarettes. He's done a mind-blowing amount of Ridley Scott movies, and he's amazing. And I asked him years ago, Alejandro, we were in New Orleans, and I said, do you still lose sleep? And he's like, oh, dude, if you sleep like a baby, if you do all the time, it's gonna suck. He's like, if you don't have sleepless nights, don't work in this industry anymore. You need to lose sleep sometimes, because you're terrified, which means you're doing something great. But it's terrifying is when you do your best work. And it's not all the time, but I've always thought, man, this is going to be great. It sucked. I learned that lesson so quickly, and Peter validated it. He's still, he just did Banshees of Inisherin, like, he's the greatest. And it's the best advice I've ever was given.
Yeah. piece of advice I want to share is came from Alan Fellows, who's an amazing Toronto production designer in commercials and music videos.
I love Alan.
Alan's once said to me, and this is very, very early on, he said, Buddha says, when you need it, it will be there. And I was kind of like, what is he talking about? He's crazy, right? Well, then I went on to start art directing and designing myself. And I was shooting at, we were doing a music video where we had to build a rooftop of an apartment building. And the director wanted those classic sort of arched skylights that you see on buildings. You know, we had painted on the site wall a big water tower and beautiful, beautiful sky, but you know, had this whole rooftop, and we couldn't find them anywhere. The buyer's set deck team went out to try to find them. Finally came back with like some wooden windows that we thought, wow, we could stack them up. And this is about 1 o'clock in the morning, the night before we're going to shoot, and we're painting the floor. And it was so far to walk to the washroom at the other end of the studio that I just went out the back door because it was 1 o'clock in the morning. And it was a snowy night out, and there's piles of snow everywhere. And I walked between two old trucks that were parked behind, I think it was the old CineSpace studio. And I was peeing on this little mountain of snow. And all of a sudden I realized I was uncovering the skylights that I had been looking for 2 weeks, and ran back in and said, get some shovels. And the other guys came out and we shoveled these things out. And Alan's words rang in my ear, when you need it, it will be there. And I can tell you that so many times in my career, I've had to trust, and you eventually find things. You know, you have to look hard enough, but you eventually find them, right?
Yeah, you got to ask for everything, and it shows up. It's true.
Yeah, as you said, Jeremy, you know, talk to a lot of people. You know, when you're looking for things, you know, talk to everybody you can. When you're, you know, in the Navy and you know, the Air Force, and everyone, you know, ask them, you know, tell them what you need, of course. You know, I love your story about being at the Admiral's house and looking around at all the things that were there, you know, the coins, whatnot, you know.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. So.
I'm going to jump in here because it's almost 9:30, and this has been, I'm just going to put my video on. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thanks so much, you guys. And I'm sorry to those that asked questions in the Q&A, which I didn't get to. But again, Julian has put in the chat the link to this. So if you take that down in a few days, you'll be able to access this conversation. And also, I think, Julian, are you putting the PDFs of the imagery into?
Yep, it's available already.
Excellent. Okay, thanks so much. And thanks so much to Jeremy and David, you both. It was fantastic, you know, exciting, insightful, and generous, and it's really wonderful. And these DGC All Art events is something that we've really come to love, and it's a really kind of nice way to gather and share ideas and conversations with each other. So thank you so much for contributing to this one.
No, Mary, you're the best. Thank you.
Thanks, Marion, for putting this together. And
yeah. Well, thank again. It was fantastic.
Fun. Thank you.
Yeah,
Hackl, always.
Yeah,
Jeremy.
Yeah.
I'll see you.
And thanks. I just want to thank Julian Lung, our tech guru in the back room, and to the National DGC for helping facilitate this event as well, and for all of you for being out here tonight, and be safe and have fun, and like all that.
Thanks so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Julian.
Thank you.
Bye.